Hey guys, tonight we slip into something deeply uncomfortable. A thick wool robe wrapped around your shoulders, barely keeping the chill from sinking into your spine. Outside, the Mongolian winter wind moans like a half-awake ghost, rattling the wooden frame of the yurt. Inside, your nose is numb, your toes have vanished somewhere below your ankle bones, and the air is so cold it bites before you can breathe it in. Congratulations, you're in the middle of the steppe in January, and the fire went out while you were dreaming about dumplings. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still conscious, leave your location and local time down in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're wrapped in sheepskins, curved like a comma against the hard floor, snuggled beside a cousin who kicks in their sleep. A smoky scent lingers in your hair, and it's not quite unpleasant, mostly just wood ash and the faint tang of fermented mare's milk. Your ears twitch at the whistle of wind around the yurt's crown opening. Somewhere outside, a dog huffs softly, paws crunching snow, maybe dreaming of chasing marmots. Your first thought isn't about getting up, it's about not getting up. Unfortunately, bodily functions don't hibernate in winter. You squint open one eye, breath plumes visibly in the air. No fire, no glowing embers. Just darkness stitched with a few stabs of dull blue-grey light squeezing in through the seams of the felt walls. You're buried under 2 wool blankets and a robe that smells like yesterday's stew. There's no clock here. Time is measured by discomfort. And your bladder has officially become louder than the wind. You crawl out from under your layers, knees creaking like old yaks. The floor is packed earth, frozen just enough to slap your soles with icy disdain. The yurt creaks when you shift the flap and duck outside into a landscape of frozen stillness. The sky is a dome of soft indigo, stars fading slowly. Your breath curls upward. Everything smells like frost and smoke and faraway horses. Somewhere in the near distance, a yak snorts. Maybe it's still asleep standing up. Lucky beast. You handle your business quickly, shivering while balancing in the snow, then dash back inside. Dash is generous, it's more of a stiff shuffle with quiet internal screaming. You're wide awake now and you know what that means. You have to start the fire. Technically that's your uncle's job, but he claims his knee predicts storms and has been loudly announcing his retirement from cold mornings since late November. So the torch has passed to you, minus the torch. You rummage for the flint. It's wrapped in felt, tucked into a bowl near the low wooden altar with strings of blue silk fluttering lazily above it. A single yak dung cake sits nearby, dry and brown, and filled with the promise of smoky heat. You feel a flicker of love for it, not much, but enough to whisper an apology when you break it in half. Fingers shaking, you crouch and strike. Flint, steel, nothing. Again. You curse under your breath, not too loud, because your aunt believes bad words attract snow demons, which is absolutely something you do not want summoned right now. The spark finally catches on the dried wool scrap, a tiny orange glow blooming like a shy sun. You coax it into life with shallow breaths. The smoke curls upward, slow and stubborn. Yet you feed it, strips of bark, twigs, and finally, half the dung cake. The scent is complex, somewhere between toasted hay and something vaguely awful that grows on rocks. But it's warm, and that's all that matters. The glow grows into a modest flame. Shadows soften. The heat doesn't exactly fill the yurt, but it gives you hope. You wiggle your toes and start to feel them again, which is both good and mildly painful. A lump stirs beside you. Your younger cousin groans dramatically and rolls over. Did you remember to face the fire hole away from the wind last night? They mumble, face still buried in their sleeve. You did, of course you did, mostly. The family starts to stir, one groan at a time. Blankets shuffle. The dog returns and shakes snow everywhere. Your aunt sits up with her braid unravelling and starts fussing with the pot. Tea is a sacred ritual, especially when your fingers are still too frozen to braid anything properly. You scoop water from the ice bucket, chipping at it with a horn spoon. The fire hisses at the shock but behaves. A pinch of tea leaves, a dollop of yak butter, a sprinkle of salt. The pot simmers. The first sip is like drinking a warm, salty hug. You don't think about the butter clinging to your upper lip. You're just grateful your lips are still attached. Your uncle groans awake, sniffs, and mutters, "Fire smells wrong, probably cursed." He says that every morning. He takes the cup anyway. Outside, the sun begins its slow rise. It doesn't so much appear as suggest itself, a faint silver glow behind grey clouds that promises light but not warmth. You sit on a low stool, cradling your tea, your hands thaw enough to hurt again. A tiny price for being alive, upright, and caffeinated. Historians still argue whether early nomadic communities like yours prioritized tea before or after fire, or even before speaking. Some claim it was offered as a peace gesture before any conversation began, especially among tribes that wintered near each other. But in your yurt, tea is the first language of the day. You glance at the felt walls, watching steam rise lazily toward the smoke hole. You've survived another night on the frozen steppe. And now, the real work begins. You're still holding your tea, now lukewarm and butter-slick, when your aunt begins clanging wooden bowls together with a sort of sleepy vengeance. This is her morning music, a non-verbal cue that loafing is over and everyone needs to start pretending they're useful, which means it's time to milk the goats. You sigh, tuck your cup into the woven basket by the stove, and grab the sheepskin mittens from the wall peg. Outside, a new day has wrapped itself in frost and wind. Your breath fogs immediately. The snow crackles under your feet like thin paper over fire. The goats are huddled together in a clump beside the animal shelter, which is little more than a windbreak made of woven reeds and optimism. They look at you with the judgmental stares of creatures who know they will not be giving up their milk without commentary. Their beards are frosted. One is still chewing, even though there's nothing visible in its mouth. You suspect spite. You shuffle closer, holding the wooden pail in one hand and muttering a half-hearted greeting. The oldest nanny goat eyes you and grunts in a tone that suggests she remembers what you did last time. 2 cold hands, sloppy grip, and possibly singing off-key during the process. You sit on a low stool, place the pail beneath her, and reach forward. She shifts. You shift. This dance goes on for several beats. Finally, you make contact. The teats are icy, like gripping a frozen worm, if the worm were annoyed and still attached to a very unimpressed goat. Milking is not a fast process in winter. Everything moves slowly. The cold stiffens your fingers, numbs your wrists. The milk comes out reluctant, stringy and warm, your one reward in this glacial purgatory. You eventually find your rhythm. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release. Steam rises from the milk as it hits the bottom of the pail. It smells faintly sweet, like warm grass and wool. Meanwhile, the goats express their feelings. One sneezes in your hair, another tries to eat the edge of your mitten, a third simply stares at you with the deadpan glare of a creature who knows she could end you with a single, well-placed hoof. And she tries. Twice. By the time you finish, your pail is half full and your pride is half gone. You trudge back to the yurt, milk sloshing, hair full of goat breath. Inside, the fire is down to coals again. Your aunt accepts the pail without a word and begins heating it with practiced indifference. Your uncle is still mumbling into his fur collar about how we used to milk in real winters. You resist the urge to remind him that the goats are the same temperature no matter the century. You head back out. There's still more to gather before breakfast, specifically yak dung. Don't roll your eyes. Dung is fuel, and without it, you're just a very cold group of humans in a felt dome slowly turning into yurt cycles. You carry a shallow basket out toward the edge of the animal area, where the yaks, having done their sacred duty, have blessed the ground in multiple steaming piles. You hold your breath as best you can, break the piles into manageable chunks with a stick, and transfer them into the basket. It's oddly meditative work. The wind howls around you, tugging at your sleeves, but your mind starts to wander. You think about the dream you had last night. Something about a yurt that flew like a kite over the Altai mountains, tethered only by a goat. Dreams have a way of sticking to you out here, like frost in your hair. You pause when you hear voices, your neighbors, coming back from checking on their herd. They wave, bundled in layers of felt and fur. You greet them with a nod. No one really shouts greetings in the cold. The air's too brittle. Back inside, the yurt smells like morning again. Milk on the boil, firewood crackling, and just a hint of scorched fur from someone leaving mittens too close to the flames. You drop the dung basket by the fire and take your place beside it, rubbing your hands until they remember how to be hands again. As breakfast simmers, an argument unfolds behind you. Your uncle is demanding to know who moved his saddlebag, and your cousin is insisting it was a goat. Your aunt counters that it was probably his cousin, the shady one with the lazy eye and a known fondness for borrowed goods. You sip another round of tea and decide to stay out of it. Family politics are warmer than the fire, but only just. Historians still argue whether early Mongol families like yours had strict boundaries on property ownership inside the yurt. Some say everything was shared communally. Others argue that each family member had fiercely defended personal items, especially tools. What's not debated? Saddlebag theft being a top-tier offense. You help stir the milk, adding a pinch of salt and a dried root for digestion. The mix bubbles thickly, coating the sides of the pot like lava. A spoonful goes into your bowl, thick, hot, a little strange, but oddly comforting. The fire pops and a glowing ember jumps out, landing near the dog. He doesn't even flinch, just sighs, shifts, and goes back to sleep. You're not jealous, really. The argument continues quietly in the background as you patch your mitten with a strip of leather and mentally prepare for the next task of the day, mending the yurt wall before the wind decides to help itself to a piece of your breakfast. But first, another sip of that goat-warmed tea. You've earned it. You set your bowl down on the floor, stretching your legs toward the fire like a cat slowly thawing from stone. The goat milk settles in your stomach like a warm stone. Not delicious exactly, but satisfying in that weird, winter survival kind of way. Unfortunately, satisfaction doesn't stop the wind from peeling back part of the yurt's felt covering. A sudden cold draft whistles through a small gap behind you, fluttering the corner of a wool blanket and making your cousin groan dramatically. "Who patched that side last?" they mumble, pulling their blanket over their face. You already know the answer. It was you. Last week. In the dark. With a needle bent at a 40-degree angle and a strand of sinew that kept snapping like it was personally offended. You grab the sewing pouch and trudge out, shoulders hunched against the wind. The yurt's outer layer, heavy felt, patched and repatched so many times it looks like a history book made of wool, is flapping near the southeast corner. You crouch, squinting up at the damage. The seam has started to tear again, revealing the inner frame of wooden latticework beneath. The wind kicks snow into your face with a kind of personal malice. You spit out a snowflake and go to work. The needle is thick, made from sharpened bone, and the thread is sinew, soaked in old broth. Your hands are stiff at first, but the muscle memory kicks in, out, tug, knot. The trick is not stabbing yourself when your fingers go numb halfway through. A snowflake lands on your thread and melts instantly. At least you've warmed up a bit. You keep stitching, adjusting your grip each time the wind yanks the felt like it's trying to start a game of tug-of-war. The cold sneaks under your collar and down your back. Your face itches, your nose drips. You push through. Midway through the repair, you hear a far-off sound, a faint hoot, like an owl but deeper, stranger. You pause, squinting at the horizon, nothing but white hills and wind. Maybe it was your imagination, or the wind echoing through a gully, or something else. You resume stitching. Historians still argue whether yurts were originally designed for mobility or survival. Some say their genius lay in the speed with which they could be disassembled and hauled across the steppe. Others claim their true brilliance was the way they held heat, tight, insulated and low to the ground, like a second skin made of wool and wisdom. You knot the final stitch, tug it tight, and pat the felt like it's a loyal dog. It's not. It flaps once more just to spite you. Just to. You mutter something impolite and retie the corner lash. There. Done. For now, you step back, assessing your work. Not perfect, but good enough. That's the motto of the winter yurt. Actually, it's the motto of winter everything. Good enough to keep from freezing. Good enough to stretch one more week. Good enough to not fall apart today. Back inside, your face stings from the sudden warmth. The fire's perked up, casting a lazy orange glow across the floor. You hang your mittens near the hearth and sit down on the sheepskin cushion with a sigh that turns into a wheeze. And then, mercifully, you hear the sound of approaching feet and laughter. Visitors? Your neighbour ducks into the yurt with the confident air of someone who didn't just have a goat sneeze on them this morning. They're followed by their sister, who carries a pouch that smells strongly of dried fish and something unidentifiable. They sit cross-legged by the fire, steam rising off their coats like mist off a pond. Conversation begins without preamble. Someone asks if you've heard about the fox spirit. You haven't. You brace yourself. Apparently, last night, just beyond the riverbank, a pale fox was seen walking on its hind legs, holding what appeared to be a twig, and possibly wearing a hat. The hat is debated, but the walking is agreed upon by at least 2 cousins and 1 uncle who claims to have spiritual sensitivity. This same uncle once confused a porcupine for a ghost, so his credentials are iffy. Still, you listen. That's what you do here. You listen and sip tea and add your own grain of exaggeration when appropriate. The tale spirals into stranger territory. Someone insists the fox whistled. Someone else swears the snow melted beneath its paws. Someone else suggests it wasn't a fox at all, but a transformed traveller on a secret mission from the Khan's court. You raise an eyebrow. That last one was you, actually. Couldn't resist. Laughter ripples through the yurt. Your aunt claps her hands and says you all need real work, not just rumours and tea. But no one moves. Not yet. The wind howls outside. It's the kind of sound that makes stories grow legs and tails. One of your visitors reaches into her sleeve and pulls out a small parcel, felt wrapped and tied with horsehair. She offers it to you, a gift. You open it carefully and find a stitched charm, a circle of fabric embroidered with a snowflake pattern, and a tiny bead in the centre. To keep the wind polite, she says with a grin. Quirky tidbit. Some families believed in sewing these charms into their sleeves or lining them into the yurt walls, not for religion, necessarily, just a quiet superstition that if you offered the wind a token it might not knock your door loose at midnight. You tuck the charm into your pocket, unsure whether you believe in it. But you do remember how that storm last year nearly took the roof off, so maybe polite wind isn't the worst idea. Eventually the neighbours leave, brushing snow from their sleeves and pulling their hoods tight. Their silhouettes fade quickly into the white outside. You sit a little longer by the fire, rolling the charm between your fingers, the warmth licking at your boots and the quiet stretching again like a blanket. You fixed the yurt, made it through the morning, and survived another round of social storytelling. Not bad for a Tuesday. The smoke curls up lazily toward the yurt's crown opening, tracing gentle loops that vanish into the grey morning sky above. You follow its trail with your eyes as you thread a needle through a thick slice of hide, steadying it against your knee. The sun is somewhere out there behind the clouds, probably. You've stopped checking the sky for warmth. These days, you just hope for less wind. You're sewing a boot again. Your current pair is on its last leg, no pun intended, and with the snow packed hard and sharp outside, walking in thin soles is like volunteering for frostbite. The boot is made of layered materials, cured cowhide for the bottom, softened sheepskin for lining, a folded lip around the ankle that's supposed to keep out snow, but mostly just collects it artistically. You've already poked yourself twice, once hard enough to leave a mark. Across the yurt, Your aunt is working on a jacket patch while humming a tune so old no one knows the words anymore, just that it's only ever sung when stitching. She claims it keeps the thread from tangling. You're not sure that's true, but you hum along anyway. Out here, small rituals feel like logic. The needle slides through the hide with a soft thunk. The thread follows, tight, tough, and slightly sticky with the gluey residue of its animal origins. You knot it, snip the end, and move to the next seam. The pattern is hypnotic. Sew, pull, tighten, adjust. You're halfway through when you realize your foot's fallen asleep. You shake it out, stretch, and glance toward the smoke hole. A single snowflake drifts down and lands on the top of the dog's head. He doesn't even blink, just sighs and keeps snoring. The yurt is unusually quiet except for the occasional creak of the wooden slats and the low murmur of someone outside chopping ice. Your cousin has been tasked with clearing the animal troughs again. He lost a bet involving fermented mare's milk, a dare, and a slightly drunk uncle. You don't ask for details, you return to your sewing. As your fingers warm up, the stitches get neater, tighter, almost professional. You feel a weird satisfaction from seeing the shape of the boot slowly come together. In a world without mirrors, this is one of the few ways to see your work. Historians still argue whether the Mongols' skill with textiles was born of necessity or cultural identity. Some say it was both, that clothing wasn't just survival gear, but a kind of quiet language, a felt-wrapped vocabulary of who you were, how skilled your family was, how far your ancestors had roamed. Your aunt agrees. She says you can always tell if someone's yurt is warm just by the way their sleeves are stitched. You run your fingers along the top of the new boot. It's not perfect, but it's solid. You press your hand inside to test the lining. Soft, warm, a small pocket of comfort against the frozen sprawl outside. As you work, smoke from the fire mingles with the smell of hide and wool and tea dregs. You pause to sip from the cup beside you. It's gone cold, no matter. The salt's still there, the butter thick on your lips. You drink anyway. Warmth is a spectrum out here. You take what you can get. You glance at your aunt's hands. Hers move like water, smooth and exact. Even with her eyes half closed, she's stitched through 3 layers of wool and hide without breaking a thread. You silently vow to get that good one day, or at least not stab yourself more than twice per boot. The stitching is broken by the sound of scratching near the hearth. You look down and see one of the ferrets poking its head out from a corner under a fur rug. It blinks, sniffs the air, and ambles toward a bowl near the fire. Yes, ferrets. No one really keeps them, they just exist here, unofficial members of the household. They eat scraps, kill mice, and occasionally steal your socks. You've named this one Colonel, because he has the air of someone constantly judging your life choices. Colonel sniffs the bowl, licks it once, then proceeds to steal the tiniest bit of dried meat from a plate you didn't know was there. He drags it under the rug like he's just executed the greatest heist of the decade. You say nothing, he's earned it. You finish the boot and set it beside its twin to cool, or maybe rest? Do boots need to rest? You're not sure. You like the idea, though. Then you add a little ornamentation, just a small stitch at the ankle, forming a spiral. No one will see it, but you'll know it's there, a mark of who made this, a quiet signature stitched in wool and willpower. As the afternoon presses on, the yurt fills with that warm, lazy energy that follows productive silence. The fire pops again. Your cousin returns, nose red and breath wheezing, dumping snow from his sleeves like he's shedding tiny clouds. He flops beside the fire, groaning. If I get frostbite, I want my toes buried with full honours. You toss him a piece of dried cheese and return to your stitching. He catches it, just barely. Your aunt finally finishes her patch, holds it up to the light, and nods in approval. She hands it to you with a quiet, "Next time, you sew it." You nod back, not exactly thrilled, but secretly proud. She doesn't hand off responsibility easily. This is her way of saying you're getting better. The light inside shifts. Afternoon is settling in, and the shadows, stretch longer across the curved walls of the yurt. The air is still cold, but it doesn't bite as hard. You lean back, stretching your arms until your shoulders crack, and let yourself enjoy the sensation of stillness. For now, the stitching is done. The boots are whole. The ferret is fed, and the fire still glows. You close your eyes for just a second, and nearly fall asleep sitting up. It's not even evening yet. You're jolted back awake by a sound no yurt dweller wants to hear in mid-afternoon, the unmistakable splash of broth over hot coals. The pot has boiled over. There's a hiss, crackle, a puff of smoke, and then your aunt's sharp intake of breath, the kind that usually precedes a stream of theatrical muttering. You glance toward the hearth just in time to see her snatch the wooden ladle like a sword and begin the clean-up, muttering under her breath about careless fire spirits and lazy eyes. You scramble to help, grabbing a wool rag and trying to sop up the bubbling puddle of yak milk before it bakes into a permanent yurt floor glaze. The steam rises and fogs your face, hot and sour, with that unmistakable tang of scorched protein. The dog lifts his head lazily, eyes half open as if to say, "Again?" This isn't the first time you've nearly sacrificed the family meal to distraction. Yesterday, it was a heated debate over whether a local fox had actually stolen someone's mitten. It hadn't. The mitten was on your cousin's head. For warmth, he forgot. The milk is salvaged, mostly. A few scorched bits float around like defeated swimmers, but your aunt insists they add character. You don't argue. You just keep your mouth busy with a strip of dried carrot and your hands with more chores. Speaking of which, it's your turn to check the hoof prints. Outside the yurt, the snow is pressed flat in 1,000 directions, like a chaotic calligraphy written in goat tracks, yak hooves, boot prints, and the occasional ambiguous paw. But you're looking for something specific. Last night, one of the goats bleated nervously around midnight, and this morning your uncle claimed he saw shadows moving near the tether post. Whether it was wolves, wandering bandits, or just the dog chasing his tail again, someone has to check. You crouch near the goat pen and scan the ground. The snow is wind-blown but still holds the impressions of whatever walked here last night. You spot a set of hoof prints, cloven, deep, angling slightly away from the herd. Too small for yak, too many for one goat. You count them. 1, 2, 3, 7, no, 9. Your cousin insists he only tethered 7. You squint. Either a neighbour's goat came for a sleepover or someone forgot how to count. You follow the trail for a few steps, noting how it circles near the dried dung pile, then veers off toward the hill. No sign of a struggle. No blood. No tufts of fur. You decide it's a false alarm, probably a nosy neighbour's goat with an adventurous streak. Still, you scratch a quick tally onto a piece of bark, just in case, and return inside. Back in the yurt, the warmth welcomes you like a thick blanket. The smell of soup has matured into something richer, earthier, and, you realize too late, completely dumpling-free. You look toward the pot. There were dumplings in there earlier. You remember seeing them. Pale little dough moons floating at the top. Now they're suspiciously absent. You narrow your eyes at your cousin. He's chewing. The silence stretches between you like a dramatic pause in a very serious play. "You took the last dumpling," you say. "I was preserving it," he replies, mouth full. "From boiling damage." "You ate it," he shrugs. "Better me than the ferret." Colonel the ferret peers out from behind the stove, as if personally offended. You sigh and sit back down, grabbing the spoon. No dumplings, but plenty of turnips, and possibly parsnip. It's hard to tell. You make a mental note to exact revenge later, probably involving socks and snow. Historians still argue whether communal meals in yurt life were equitable or opportunistic. Some claim the Mongol emphasis on shared resources meant everyone ate the same portions. Others note that whoever got to the pot first often had mysterious extra helpings that no one could quite explain. What no one debates. Dumplings were gold, and yours is gone. Still chewing, your cousin shifts topics. "Saddle's cracked," he says. "Left strap's nearly torn through." You groan. That's your next task. You pull the saddle from the corner of the yurt. It's heavy, worn, and smells like old horse sweat and fermented leather. The cracked strap stares at you accusingly. You sit cross-legged with a roll of oiled twine, a curved awl, and a small pot of bone glue. Saddle repair is slow work, half sewing, half sculpting. You wet the leather, soften it with your hands, and begin rethreading the strap through the rein ring. The glue sets quickly in this cold, so you have to work fast. Your fingers are already stiff, but your movements are precise. You think about the horse that wears this saddle, Tool, named after the river, because she once stepped into it and refused to leave for 3 hours. She's temperamental but loyal, fast when she wants to be, and frighteningly smart. She once untied her own reins just to eat someone else's grain. You patch the strap, test the tension, then bind it tight. The knot holds for now. You'll need to oil the rest of the saddle later, but it'll do for the next ride. As you wipe your hands, your aunt ladles another bowl of soup for you. Still no dumplings, but she throws in a bonus carrot slice. Maybe she saw the argument. Outside, the light begins to fade. The wind shifts direction, brushing the felt walls with a new rhythm. The dog growls once, then settles. A signal maybe, or just a dream. You sit with your bowl, spoon clinking quietly, and listen as the yurt breathes around you, timbers creaking, fire crackling, wind sighing. The stories are over, the chores are done, and for now, at least, the yurt is whole. Your cousin picks something from his teeth and looks at you. I didn't technically steal it, he says. You nod, slowly. Of course not. And next time you'll hide the dumplings under the turnips. The sun has started its slow descent behind the hills, and the sky is curling into that soft gradient between grey and blue that promises evening but offers no warmth. You've finished your soup, wiped the last of the broth from your lips, and packed away the saddle for another day. Just as you consider whether you might be able to sneak in a nap before the next task, you hear the distinctive crunch of boots on snow outside the yurt. Not hurried, not hesitant, confident, deliberate steps. You glance up as the door flap lifts, letting in a rush of icy air, and with it, a figure wrapped in layers of thick wool and fox fur, dusted white with the day's frost. A visitor. He's young, no more than 20, with a copper amulet glinting at his chest and a bundle of wrapped items slung across his back. His cheeks are red, his hands bare, and his eyes bright with something that sits somewhere between mischief and exhaustion. He bows lightly, then drops his load by the fire. My master sends these, he says, untying the bundle to reveal small pouches, charms, and dried herbs. A shaman's apprentice. Tis rare to get one this far north without a specific reason. He's offered a place near the hearth, and your aunt immediately starts ladling tea. Your uncle squints at the charms and mutters something about, last time this ended in dreams of giant birds and goats with teeth. But he drinks the tea anyway. The apprentice unwraps one of the charms, a felt circle with a bead in the centre and red stitching around the edge. Protection from dreams, he says, especially the biting kind. You're not sure if he's joking? He pulls out another, a string of knotted wool and 3 tiny bones. This one encourages clarity of thought, he explains, tying it to one of the support poles. Your cousin asks if it works for goats too. The apprentice doesn't answer. You suspect he's heard that one before. Historians still argue about the exact role of Mongolian shamans during peaceful times. While often associated with warfare and ceremonies, many apprentices travelled from yurt to yurt in winter, distributing charms, interpreting dreams, and diagnosing spiritual imbalances blamed for everything from stubbed toes to failed dumplings. You watch as he mixes dried herbs into a small bowl, crushing them with a curved stone. The scent drifts up, sharp, earthy, with a hint of mint and something smoky. He tells your aunt it's for the child's cough. Your youngest cousin has been hacking since last night. As he works, the conversation turns. He asks if you've seen anything strange in the last few nights. Odd dreams, flickering lights, animals behaving oddly. You exchange glances with your cousin, remembering the hoofprint count that didn't add up. And that weird sound behind the yurt yesterday, the one everyone agreed to ignore. You mention the hoofprints. He nods slowly. Sometimes the land sends warnings. They walk on hooves, but don't leave a scent. That's comforting. He adds another bundle of herbs to the fire, and a new aroma floods the yurt, resinous, calming, like pine warmed by sunlight. Your eyes water a little, not from the smoke. At least that's what you tell yourself. The dog lifts his head and sniffs, then curls back up and lets out a soft chuff, as if granting approval. You trust the dog more than most people, so that helps. Your aunt offers the apprentice a piece of cheese, which he accepts with exaggerated reverence. You can tell he's starving. He devours it in 3 bites, then pulls out a tiny scroll from his coat and rolls it open. Inside are symbols, not letters, but markings, loops, lines and circles connected like a spider web. He traces one with his finger. "Dream from the southern range," he says. "My master believes something is shifting." No one knows what that means, but everyone nods solemnly, as if they do. The apprentice finishes his tea, stands and begins packing up. He's not staying, just passing through like the wind. He wraps his herbs, bundles his charms, and pulls his hood back over his head. Before he leaves, he turns to you and presses something into your hand. A charm, smaller than the others, made of braided hair and a single green bead. "For calm sleep," he says, "if the wind lets you." Then he's gone, slipping out into the white twilight, footsteps quickly swallowed by snow and distance. You sit back down by the fire, opening your hand to look again at the charm. It's simple, familiar, but something about it feels heavier than its size. Your cousin stares at it. "Think it works?" "Can't hurt," you reply, and hang it near your sleeping place. The yurt settles again, quieter now, like it's listening. The herbs still burn faintly on the coals, scenting the air with a strange peace. Colonel the ferret re-emerges and sniffs the floor where the apprentice sat. Apparently satisfied, he curls up near your knee and begins chewing something that may or may not be one of your laces. Your uncle grumbles, "Hope he doesn't come back next time with news about sky ghosts." You stretch your legs and lean back on your elbows. The fire flickers, the charm spins slightly on its thread, and you wonder just a little if your dreams tonight will be the usual mix of goats and dumplings, or something that walks on hooves but leaves no scent. The fire's glow is now the strongest light in the yurt, casting a soft amber wash over the floor and illuminating your breath in little puffs every time you exhale. You sit near the hearth, arms wrapped around your knees, soaking up what warmth you can before the next round of evening chores. The air outside has thickened, colder, somehow quieter. Even the wind seems to hesitate before rushing across the plains now, and inside things shift into their usual rhythm. Bowls are stacked, boots re-wrapped in felt for the night, and your aunt begins humming the dinner-time melody again, the one that's somewhere between a lullaby and a subtle threat to whoever didn't finish their chores. You're about to start helping with the firewood when your neighbour peeks into the yurt, brushing snow from her hood with fast, nervous hands. "You coming?" she asks. You blink. "Coming where?" "Circle, gossip." You don't need much convincing. You grab your outer wrap, stuff your feet back into your boots, which haven't fully dried, but are at least not frozen, and follow her out into the darkening world. The gossip circle forms behind her family's yurt, where a windbreak of snow-packed hay bales offers some refuge from the elements. A small fire crackles in a dugout pit, low and practical, ringed by stones blackened from years of similar use. About 7 others are there already, neighbours, cousins, 2 elderly women who never smile but somehow know everything. They make room for you with a grunt and a nod, and someone passes you a folded wool mat to sit on. You drop into place, accepting a steaming cup of weak tea that tastes like mint and smoke. And then it begins. "So you all heard about Ganbold's ox?" someone says, loud enough to set off a ripple of snorts. Yes, but the real story, says another, is that it wasn't the ox that broke the yoke. It was the yoke that ran away. Laughter. You sip your tea. The stories tumble out like ice chunks from a river thawing. Ganbold's ox, sure, but also Tungalag's daughter, who was caught sneaking fermented milk to her boyfriend behind the goat pen. A wolf seen near the southern ridge who, according to 3 different sources, either had 2 heads, wore a bell, or politely asked for directions. One woman swears she saw a light in the sky 2 nights ago, too low for a star, too fast for a bird, and shaped like a spoon with legs. No one believes her, not really, but no one disagrees either. You love this part of the day. The way the cold pulls everyone closer, the way the firelight flickers across laughing faces, the way truth and fiction snuggle so closely together they forget which one is which. A child chimes in about a goat that's been singing at dawn. Someone else claims it's just her uncle. More laughter. Then the conversation shifts to news from the southern camps. A travelling cousin had arrived earlier that week and brought stories of traders stuck in frozen rivers, a shaman who collapsed mid-ritual, and a merchant who tried to sell pickled onions as medicine for winter ghosts. Historians still argue whether these evening gatherings served as real news distribution or were mostly for entertainment. In reality, it was both. Where else could you find out about an impending livestock disease and learn that your aunt once mistook her shadow for a bear and screamed herself hoarse? The gossip circle is more than entertainment. It's how memories are preserved, even if they're wildly inaccurate and embroidered with every retelling. You find yourself joining in, mentioning the fox story again, but with a twist this time. It walked on its hind legs and carried a basket, you say, probably bringing snacks to its ghost wife. That one gets a good round of amused groans. Someone pulls out a small pouch and tosses a few toasted barley seeds into the fire. For luck. Or flavour? No one's sure anymore. It just feels right. A girl beside you leans over. Did you hear about the frozen footprints found near the old well? She whispers. They went in a circle. Perfect, like a ring. She makes a motion in the air with her finger. And there were no other prints around. Just those, like something came from under. You want to say that's impossible, but instead you ask, did anyone check? She shrugs. No one wants to be the one who finds something. The fire crackles. The sky above deepens from navy to ink. A few stars blink through the haze. Someone starts a song. Low, rhythmic, more chant than melody. No instruments, just voices and the soft thump of mittens tapping thighs. You hum along, not knowing the words, just the shape of them. Your tea is cold. Your toes are colder. But your heart is warm with the hush and the laughter and the strange comfort of people spinning wild tales under a velvet sky. Eventually the fire is stamped out, the mats folded, and people begin trudging back to their yurts, calling soft goodnights, promises to continue the story tomorrow. You walk slowly, enjoying the crunch of snow under your feet, the way your breath curls ahead of you like a guide. Back inside, the yurt is warm again, your cousin's curled up with a sheepskin over his face, your aunt's humming softly as she kneads dough. Even the dog looks sleepy, curled tight with his paws over his nose. You hang your coat, shake off the snow, and ease back into your spot near the fire, head fuzzy with stories, and your fingers still smelling faintly of mint and smoke. And as you settle in, you realize, no matter how cold the wind gets, no matter how strange the sky looks, you're never far from the comfort of a good story and a shared cup of tea. You wake up just enough to realize you've dozed off near the fire, chin to chest, fingers still curled, till curled, like you're holding a teacup that's long since vanished. The heat from the hearth has faded a bit, but the coals still glow faintly, pulsing like a sleepy heart. You shift your weight, the floor creaking softly beneath you, and notice something else, a faint line of smoke curling higher than usual. Not dangerous, just dramatic. Above you, the smoke hole yawns wide, a circle of dark sky fringed with the rim of the yurt's crown. Through it, stars prick the velvet black, flickering like they know secrets you don't. The smoke rises directly up tonight, no sideways gusts, no coughing wind pushing it around. That means the air outside is still, heavy, probably very cold. Your breath fogs in the lamplight. You pull your robe tighter and shift your cushion just slightly. Not because you're cold exactly, but because the edge of the mat has started poking you in the spine. Your aunt has moved to the far side of the yurt and is bent over her sewing frame, illuminated by a tiny oil lamp that casts a buttery puddle of light. She's stitching a lining into an old tunic, humming again. That same tune, always the same. You turn your attention back to your hands where a torn wool sock has recently appeared. It seems you've been volunteered for more sewing. You don't argue. You just reach for the bone needle. It's funny how repetitive tasks can lull you into a kind of soft awareness. Not quite sleep, but not entirely awake either. You sew, you pull, you knot, and your thoughts drift like the smoke above your head. Outside, there's a gentle scratching sound like a fox, or maybe the wind dragging a branch across the wall. No one reacts, so you don't either. The sock is stubborn. The wool has felted in places and your needle keeps catching. You mutter something unkind at it and jab harder. It squeaks as if offended. Your cousin, still half asleep on his cushion, mutters, "Don't stab the sock. It didn't choose this life." You smirk and keep stitching. Historians still argue about the details of domestic life inside yurts during winter. Written records are scarce, and what exists was often penned by travellers, merchants or envoys surprised to find warmth and hospitality inside what they assumed were drafty tents. One Chinese envoy once wrote that the inside of a yurt smelled of meat, fire, and leather dreams, which frankly feels accurate. A gust of wind finally finds its voice outside, whistling across the plain. The felt walls rustle gently. The oil lamp flickers. And from beneath the low wooden storage bench, movement stirs. You freeze. A whiskered nose pokes out, then a pair of gleaming eyes. Colonel. The ferret emerges, dragging with him a small treasure, the string of goat-hide beads your cousin had been making earlier in the day. He drops it near the hearth like a cat offering a mangled gift and stares at you expectantly. You pick it up. No teeth marks, miraculous. He does a little circle, perhaps a victory lap, then curls up by the warmest stone and immediately starts snoring. You envy him. Your sock repair is almost done when you hear it, the soft tap-tap of snowflakes beginning to fall against the crown of the yurt. You look up. Through the smoke hole, a flurry begins, tiny flecks drifting down, white against black, catching the firelight like floating sparks. Some melt before they reach the coals, others land on your sleeve, sticking for half a second before vanishing into dampness. It's mesmerizing. You shift your mat again, just slightly to the side, right beneath the smoke hole. You lean back, arms tucked behind your head, and stare up. It feels oddly theatrical, like the sky is putting on a private show just for you. Slow, patient snows spiraling through the round opening like confetti falling from the hands of invisible giants. One flake lands on your cheek. It's cold enough to sting, then gone. You remember when you were little, lying right here, in this same spot, staring up at the sky through that opening and imagining that the yurt was a giant eye, and you were the pupil, watching the stars blink around you. You even whispered to them once, hoping they'd blink back. A silly thing, but not that silly. Tonight, you whisper again, just a little. Try not to snow too much. We have to fix the fence tomorrow. No answer, of course. Unless you count the wind shifting again, just enough to puff smoke sideways and tickle your nose. Your aunt finally sets her sewing aside, brushing her hands on her apron and muttering something about old thread and younger eyes. She eyes your sock approvingly but doesn't say anything. just gives a small nod and starts covering the breadbasket with a cloth. The yurt dims further. The fire drops to low embers. The oil lamp is capped. Only the faint blue light of snow through the smoke hole remains. You're lying there, still staring upward, when your cousin, still half covered in a blanket, asks, "You ever think the stars are just holes in the sky blanket?" You snort. "So what's above that?" "Something warm, probably," he mumbles, "like soup." You both fall quiet. Outside, the snow taps gently on the yurt's roof. Inside, the air thickens with the smell of wood, wool, and distant dreams. You close your eyes. Not to sleep, not yet. Just to listen to the soft breathing around you, to feel the calm that comes after firelight, and to let the stars keep blinking, one flake at a time, through the top of the world. The coals glow like sleepy eyes, half-lidded and pulsing low beneath their thin blanket of ash. You're still lying beneath the smoke hole, now fully bundled in your robe, with only your nose and the top half of your face peeking out. Somewhere between wakefulness and dreams, you hear the low creak of your aunt stirring again, this time with a different purpose. She's making broth, not for a meal, not for guests, but for the ferrets. You lift your head slightly. Colonel is already alert, having sensed this with the sort of sixth sense reserved only for spoiled animals and small children, sensing candy nearby. Your aunt scoops a small ladle of leftover broth into a wooden bowl and sets it near the edge of the fire. She doesn't say a word. Colonel sniffs once, then saunters over like royalty summoned to a feast. The scent rises, meaty, faintly sweet, and infused with herbs boiled down to their softest notes. You inhale deeply. It's like comfort in vapor form. You almost wish you were the one being fed by hand. You sit up slowly, arms stiff from lying so long. The yurt has quieted again. Your cousin has rolled onto his side, blanket over his head, legs sticking out at a weird angle. Your uncle is snoring with the consistency of a malfunctioning drum. The dog is twitching in his sleep, paws kicking gently, probably chasing snow hares across the dream steppe. You rise, stretch your arms over your head, and quietly grab the small bowl near the hearth that still holds a few fragments of meat and barley. You scoop it into your own wooden dish, add a splash of water, and heat it briefly near the coals, just enough to warm your hands. As it simmers, you glance toward the felt bundles near the yurt entrance. Among them are a few charms the shaman's apprentice left behind. One has been tucked into the wall, another sewn onto the edge of a cushion. The smallest one dangles from the crown support like a lazy spider, swaying ever so slightly in the breeze of the rising smoke. And that's when it hits you. This is the calmest moment of the day. No chores left. No gossip flying. No blizzards on the horizon. Just you, the fire, and a little bowl of evening comfort. You eat in silence, chewing slowly, each bite soft and just salty enough to remind you your aunt knows exactly how tired your taste buds are of boiled things. As you eat, you glance around the yurt at the carved wooden chests storing fabric and old bones and odd little tools no one remembers how to use. At the 3 sticks leaning near the entrance flap that your cousin insists are lucky. At the thin trail of soot snaking along the ceiling from a time someone forgot to open the smoke hole before lighting damp wood. All of it is ordinary, every mark, every corner, familiar. But tonight it all feels, kind, like the yurt itself is breathing with you. Historians still debate whether the inner layout of Mongolian yurts followed strict spiritual geometry or just a mix of practicality and superstition. Most agree on some symbolism, the north side for the altar and honoured guests, the east for women's tools and the fire, the west for men's gear and weapons. But others argue the true rule was simply put it where it fits and doesn't catch fire. You finish your broth and set the bowl aside, wiping your hands on your sleeve. There's one last thing to do before sleep fully takes over. You toss a few thin twigs onto the fire, just enough to coax it to life again without waking the whole family. The glow rises, gentle and sleepy. You stir the coals with a stick until they shift and settle, glowing deeper. Then you find the small pouch of dried crumbs your aunt set aside earlier. You sprinkle them near the fire, not for food, but for the ferrets. A thank you, payment for services rendered in keeping the yurt mouse free. Or mostly mouse-free. Let's not get too optimistic. Colonel pokes his nose from his nap pile, sniffs once, and flops back down. You suspect he's training a new generation of ferret interns to take over the night shift. You lie down again, pulling your robe over your shoulders, folding one arm beneath your head. The fire hums beside you. The wind outside whispers, not quite asleep, but no longer biting. You think about tomorrow's chores, the frozen buckets that will need breaking, the saddle girth that needs retightening, the conversation you overheard about someone's goat that might be in love with a broom. You smile, just a little. And then the yurt creaks, not from wind, and from wind, not from movement, but from the sound of temperature. Yes, temperature. When it gets cold enough, the wooden slats make a sound, a soft tock, like someone tapping fingernails on a table. A reminder that the world outside is still shifting, still pressing in, still demanding respect. You pull the covers tighter and glance once more at the crown hole. The snow has stopped falling. Above, the stars blink again, still holding secrets. And inside, the last of the broth simmers gently beside the fire. It's time to sleep. But just before you close your eyes, you whisper, softly, more to yourself than anyone, "Stay warm, Colonel." He doesn't answer, but he doesn't need to. Sleep doesn't arrive all at once. It drips in slowly, like water from a leaky roof, soaking the edges of your mind until everything feels heavy and warm. You're not sure when you fell fully asleep. Maybe it was during the soft crackle of the fire. Maybe it was right after Colonel stopped twitching and sighed like a tiny, furry mountain. But you do wake, briefly. It's dark now, properly dark, not the cozy flicker of fading coals kind of dark, the kind of dark that hums in your ears, no fire, no visible outlines of the yurt walls, only that peculiar blackness that makes you feel like you're floating inside a wool-lined cave, wrapped in breath and shadows. Your eyes adjust slowly. The faintest shape of the roof lattice appears above you. A few stars are still visible through the smoke hole, now looking more like pinpricks poked in the ceiling by a lazy sky spirit. Then you hear it, the unmistakable sound of someone stepping slowly near the hearth, the soft scuff of wool-wrapped feet on packed earth. You freeze. Not out of fear, exactly, but because this moment hangs oddly in the air, like something watching to see what you'll do next. Then you remember it's just your aunt. She always checks the fire in the middle of the night. She worries the cold will sneak in and settle like a grumpy spirit inside someone's lungs. And she's probably not wrong. You hear the rustle of her cloak, the muted clink of fire tools. Then the soft exhale of breath as she lifts the pot lid to see if anything edible remains. The embers glow faintly, just enough to show her outline. Bent, deliberate, part human, part shadow. You hear her murmur something, maybe to the fire, maybe to herself. She adds a few dry twigs, fans it gently, then wraps herself in silence again and retreats back to her bedding like a ghost, fulfilling a small ritual. You lie there, eyes half open, listening to the slow return of silence. Then a second noise, much softer, a cough, not yours, not your cousin's either. It comes from the little bedroll where your youngest family member is curled, a light sleeper, a heavy dreamer, and a magnet for midnight wheezing. You hear the cough again. Then the sound of your aunt moving quickly. She whispers something, unwraps a bundle of cloth, and begins preparing an herbal remedy in the dark. You catch the scent as she crushes dried leaves, bitter, minty, sharp like pine needles and distant mountains. She mixes the herbs with warm water and offers them in a horn cup. The coughing eases. Not fully, but enough. Your aunt settles down again. The yurt quiets once more. You stare up at the ceiling. The stars have shifted, or perhaps the clouds have moved. Either way, you know a chunk of the night has passed. You close your eyes, only to open them again. This time, it's the dog. A low, rolling growl comes from the shadows beside the door. Not angry, not even truly alarmed, just concerned. The kind of growl a dog makes when it hears something that it doesn't quite recognize. The room stiffens. Even your cousin shifts under his blanket, clearly awake now. He doesn't say anything, neither do you. You sit up slightly, listen, and then you hear it too. A sound outside, not wind, not snow. A shuffling, irregular crunch, like footsteps in fresh powder, slow, deliberate, but too far apart to be human. Maybe hooves, maybe something else. Colonel's head lifts from under the blanket pile. His whiskers twitch, his nose points toward the door. Your aunt is already reaching for her stick, the one carved from a bent piece of blackened juniper, shaped by years of ritual and utility alike. Your uncle mutters, could be one of Tumer's sheep. But no one believes that. The dog barks once, quietly, not loud, not challenging, just a warning. Then silence. Nothing outside, just a longer than usual pause in the wind. A pregnant stillness, and then all at once the moment passes. No knock, no howl, no scratching at the walls. The wind resumes its pacing across the steppe. The fire gives one pop, as if startled back into its normal rhythm. Everyone pretends to relax. Your aunt returns to her bedding. Your uncle shifts and grumbles something unintelligible about spirit nonsense. Colonel retreats back beneath his rug. Even the dog settles again, though his ears stay slightly raised, just in case. You lie down slowly. Your robe feels colder now, the air sharper, but not threatening. Historians still argue whether Mongol yurts were designed with spiritual protection in mind, or if they simply became natural sanctuaries because of their shape, their materials, their place in the wind. There's no clear answer. But you've always felt safer inside than out. You pull the wool tighter around your shoulders and stare into the ceiling one last time. The stars have faded, or your eyes have. A memory floats up from childhood, your grandmother whispering stories about wind spirits that walked the snow in human shapes, never speaking, never knocking, but always listening. You were told if you stayed quiet, they'd pass you by. You decide to stay very, very quiet. Eventually, your breathing evens out. Your fingers unclench. And your thoughts drift, not into dreams just yet, but into the calm space between questions and sleep. Whatever passed by is gone now. The fire flickers. The yurt creaks, and above you the night knits itself shut again. By the time you next open your eyes, it's not because of dreams or distant sounds, but because your aunt has bumped your foot with her knee and told you very gently that it's time to get up. Again, you groan. Not dramatically, but with the weary acceptance of someone who knows there is no escape from mourning in a Mongolian yurt during winter, especially not when breakfast depends on your willingness to get moving. The fire is still low but alive, thanks to your aunt's quiet diligence. She's already upright, hair braided and pinned, hands busy with a wooden spoon and a pot that smells faintly of barley, bone, and whatever root vegetable was most cooperative yesterday. The air inside the yurt is warmer than it has any right to be. Someone threw extra dung on the fire? Probably you. You're never credited for your nighttime contributions to family survival, but that's fine. That's your cross to bear. You roll out from your bedding, pulling your robe around you like a reluctant burrito. You sit up slowly, blinking at the familiar arrangement of objects in the dim light. Wooden chests, felt-wrapped bundles, scraps of leather, Colonel the ferret now asleep on his back with one tiny paw over his face like he can't deal with mornings either. Then it happens. Your cousin sits up, yawns, stretches, and immediately knocks over a small ceramic pot with his elbow. It wobbles once, then rolls directly into the fire pit with a pitiful plop and a brief hiss. Silence. Your aunt stops stirring. The dog lifts his head. You try to become invisible. Your cousin stares at the steaming ruins of what was, quite likely, the leftover sauce from last night's dumpling-free stew. He mouths, "Oops." Your aunt says nothing. Just makes a sound deep in her throat, the kind of noise usually reserved for wild dogs and poorly trained apprentices. You spring into action, not because you're responsible, but because you'd like to deflect attention. "I'll check the fence," you say, grabbing your boots and shoving your feet into them with all the grace of a half-frozen walrus. "You'll fix the fence," your aunt corrects. You nod. "That's what I meant." Outside, the morning slaps you awake. The cold is sharper than before, less fog, more clarity. The snow has hardened overnight into a crunchy crust, the kind that complains with every step. You squint into the white horizon, tug your hat tighter, and trudge toward the animal fence. It's not a fence in the traditional sense, more like a suggestion. Short posts driven into the ground, strung with old rope, reinforced with whatever was lying around during the last storm, some branches, a coat, and a broken sled. You walk the perimeter, scanning for gaps. There's one. Of course. 2 of the posts have been knocked sideways either by a very motivated goat or a gust of wind that got bored. The rope has snapped. You crouch to examine the damage, hands stiff from the cold, and begin the slow, familiar work of tying, retightening, wedging, and swearing under your breath. You spot hoofprints near the broken section, likely just one of your goats with ambition. But they lead farther than expected, around the edge of a hill, toward the snow-packed trail that curves out toward the western ridge. You follow them for a few steps, pausing when they veer off and fade into a flurry of ice-crusted drifts. You hesitate. And then you do the sensible thing, you pretend you didn't see them. You return to the yurt, convinced that if the goat wanted to leave that badly, it probably had a reason. And possibly a better breakfast waiting elsewhere. Inside, the mood has softened. The fire is stronger. The stew smells finished. Your cousin is still trying to look apologetic, but has settled for helping your aunt mix flour for flatbread. You shake the snow from your shoulders, stomp your boots near the door, and ease back into your spot by the hearth. A bowl is handed to you without a word. It's heavy and warm, filled with soft barley, scraps of meat, and enough spice to remind your tongue that life goes on, even in winter. You eat slowly, savoring every bite, not because you're stalling, but because food tastes different out here. Fuller, earned. Your uncle finally sits up, grumbling about dreams of flying sheep and demanding to know who's been using his firewood pile for footstools. No one answers. Historians still argue whether Mongol breakfasts were standardized or flexible. Some records mention soup, others refer to dairy cakes and meat stews. The truth? Breakfast is whatever didn't freeze overnight and whatever you managed not to burn. Flexibility isn't just a virtue, it's survival. You finish your bowl and lick the spoon discreetly. Your cousin finishes his flatbread and not discreetly offers Colonel a crumb. The ferret sniffs it, snorts, and rolls back into sleep. The rest of the morning slides forward with a slow, comfortable rhythm. Someone sharpens a knife. Someone else rearranges a stack of drying herbs. Your aunt begins laying out wool for felting, muttering about holes in the wall and winter gods who never fix anything themselves. You, meanwhile, stare into the fire, not for meaning, just for heat. And as the embers shift and settle, so do you, grateful for the warmth, for the food, for the fact that you weren't the one who spilled the pot this time. At least, not today. By mid-morning, the yurt begins to buzz with motion again, not chaotic, just alive, the kind of quiet activity that says, we survived another night and now the world expects us to keep doing things. You're seated near the door flap, repairing a fur mitten whose thumb gave up yesterday during the goat fence fiasco. The fur is stubborn, slick, and refuses to cooperate with your needle. Every stitch feels like a negotiation between you and the previous wearer, who, judging by the tiny size and faint smell of onions, was probably your cousin's niece. Your cousin himself is outside, allegedly collecting more firewood, but based on his speed, you're pretty sure he's mostly just walking in a large circle and kicking snow. From behind you, your aunt calls out, "That felt panel's coming loose again." You sigh. Of course it is. You set down the mitten and step out into the wind. It's worse than yesterday. A sharp, persistent breeze that gets in your eyes and ears and thinks it lives there now. The yurt wall facing west, the windward side, has started flapping like a badly tied curtain. A corner of the outer felt is peeling back, revealing the wooden lattice beneath like ribs poking through a worn coat. You squint into the wind, tug your hood down tighter, and shuffle over. Fixing it means tying the corner strap tighter, but the knot has frozen stiff. You rub your hands together, breathe on them, and begin unpicking the cord with your fingers, already turning pink. It takes a while. You mutter under your breath, something about the wind having a personal vendetta, and begin the retying process. This time, you double knot it. Then, just for good measure, you reinforce it with a thin strip of leather and a wish. As you work, you hear a distant crack from the hills, probably a branch snapping under ice. Still, it makes you glance up. The steppe stretches endlessly, white, windswept, and a little too quiet. You head back inside. The yurt greets you like an old friend holding a warm cup. The smells have shifted. Now there's more fat in the air, more smoke, a promise of lunch. Your aunt is pressing soft dough onto a hot pan near the fire, flipping it with her bare fingers like someone who's long since made peace with pain. She hands you one without a word. You burn your fingers slightly, but it's worth it. Crispy on the edges, soft in the middle, and tasting faintly of onion, smoke, and triumph. You chew in silence, eyes drifting across the yurt. Everything's in motion. Your uncle is scraping an antler with a stone blade, shaping it into a hook for hanging bags. Your cousin has finally returned with a bundle of wood that appears to include 2 actual sticks and 1 frozen goat turd. He claims it's strategic. Colonel the ferret is curled up in the wool basket, snoring gently, one paw twitching as if chasing dream bugs. Then your aunt stands suddenly and points to the ceiling. "That's sagging again." You follow her gaze. She's right. A section of the crown lattice is bowing slightly under the weight of snow, just enough to be dangerous if the snowpack gets worse. No yurt owner wants to wake up with half a roof in their tea. You're the smallest, which means this is your job. You dig out the wooden yurt ladder, a spindly thing that creaks like it's been scared of heights its whole life, and position it beneath the drooping ceiling beam. Up you go. Each rung squeaks. Each step feels slightly colder than the last. At the top, you reach the beam and begin gently brushing snow away through the smoke hole with a birch broom. The flakes scatter, catching light before vanishing into the wind. You knock once, softly, on the inside of the frame, just to loosen anything hanging above. The ceiling groans once in response, not dangerously, just enough to say, "Fine, fine, I'm awake." Historians still argue whether the circular construction of yurts was designed purely for efficiency, or if there was something symbolic to it, a sun wheel, a cosmic map, a metaphor for the eternal sky. Some suggest the crown opening represented the eye of heaven watching over the family. Others say it was just a very smart chimney. You brush the last bit of snow away and peer out. The view from up here is different. Not higher, exactly, but more centered. You can see across the yurt's interior from edge to edge, from sleeping bundles to storage crates to fire pit. It looks smaller from here, cozier, like a heartbeat wrapped in wool. You descend and reposition the ladder, tying off the supporting pole with a new strap. The sag is gone, for now. Your aunt gives you a rare nod of approval. Your cousin pretends he helped. Lunch is ladled into bowls, stew again, but thicker this time. You sit cross-legged and blow gently across the surface. The scent rises, meat, turnip, and something spicy that might be crushed pepper or might be dried mystery leaf. You eat, slowly, mindfully, like someone who knows this might be the warmest part of your day. Then, like clockwork, the flap lifts, and in shuffle the neighbours, 3 of them, all wrapped in furs, cheeks pink from cold, each bearing some small offering, a jar of sour milk, a cloth bundle of dried berries, a cracked clay pot filled with something. They settle in. Bowls are offered. Conversation swells. One begins talking about a dream she had last night, of a horse with wings who spoke her name and then trotted across the sky, trailing fire. Another interrupts. Are you sure it wasn't the Northern Lights? It said my name, she insists. Someone snickers, but only quietly. Another nods. My mother said winged horses only appear when the air is too still, when something is about to change. Everyone goes quiet for just a moment. Then someone sneezes and the moment is gone. The talk shifts to sled repairs and that one uncle who keeps getting lost on purpose so he doesn't have to fetch water. More laughter. You sip your stew, watching steam rise and swirl like the snowflakes you swept away earlier. The yurt is warm, full, briefly weightless, and for this sliver of the day, you forget about the wind outside, the chores waiting, the goat with a mysterious vendetta against your boots, because in here, at least for now, everything holds. After the neighbours leave, belly full, stories shared, promises made to return with more berries next week, the yurt settles again. The air feels thicker somehow, not with smoke, but with the contented heaviness that follows a warm meal and communal laughter. You've pulled your robe a little tighter around your shoulders, more from habit than necessity, and you're thinking just for a moment that you might get away with doing nothing for the next half hour. Then you hear it. Shh, pop. The unmistakable sound of liquid bubbling over. Your eyes snap toward the hearth, and sure enough, the pot of yak milk you left reheating is now enthusiastically frothing its way over the edge. A creamy white ring has begun to form around the base of the pot, and the coals beneath it sizzle with a spiteful hiss. You leap up, grab the wooden ladle, and lift the pot from the fire just in time to prevent a second wave of disaster. Too late to save the dignity of the pot, though. Your aunt looks up from darning socks and arches a single eyebrow. That's worse than yelling. Your cousin snorts. That's what happens when you let your stew pride go to your head. You dab at the foamed-over edge with a rag, swearing gently. Not actual swear words, just the kind of noises people make when a task escapes them at the last second. You fan the coals a little too hard in frustration, and a burst of smoke leaps straight into your face. Coughing, you set the pot aside and give the hearth a long, thoughtful glare, as if it betrayed you, which, in fairness, it kind of did. Colonel watches from his usual spot, perched on a pile of scrap cloth, eyes gleaming like he enjoys this far too much. You reach for the rag again. As you do, your fingers brush something slightly damp. Great. The milk has seeped beneath one of the family's prized felt mats, the one with the faded spiral pattern embroidered by your great-aunt before she moved south. If that sets, it'll smell like boiled socks for a week. You quickly lift the mat and hang it over a drying line strung between 2 roof beams. The damp patch already looks guilty. Next time, your aunt says, not looking up. Don't try to boil milk when you're daydreaming. Daydreaming about dumplings. She's not wrong. You sigh, then open the yurt flap to let the smoke out. A gust of cold air rushes in, biting at your cheeks. You flap the edge of the felt once or twice, then secure it back into place. The smoke drifts lazily out, curling toward the sky like it's pretending to be innocent. You take a deep breath of the outdoor air, sharp, clean, the kind of air that hits the back of your throat like mint and memory. Then you step back inside and stir what's left of the milk, which now has a lovely, scorched top layer that smells like, well, roasted regret. Your cousin takes one look and wisely says nothing. To make up for it, you grab a handful of dried meat strips and toss them into the pot. If it's going to taste weird, it might as well taste intentionally weird. A few pinches of dried herbs from the hanging pouch, some thyme, maybe a little dried chive, transform the situation from kitchen mistake into experimental culinary triumph. Historians still debate how Mongol nomads seasoned their food. Some argue that flavor was a luxury rarely indulged, that sustenance mattered far more than spice. Others point to the bundles of dried herbs found in burial sites, the occasional imported garlic clove, the travelling traders who brought salt cakes and root bundles. The truth is likely both. When resources allowed, even a pot of overboiled milk could become a small celebration. You sit back, watching the mixture bubble. You stir it slowly this time, no rush. Let it thicken into something stew adjacent. As it simmers, your cousin plops beside you, wrapping himself in an extra felt throw. "You ever wonder," he says, "how many pots our great-grandmother scorched before she got it right?" You nod. "And how many she blamed on someone else?" A chuckle, then silence. The light filtering through the smoke hole has softened again. Afternoon is slowly melting toward evening. Shadows stretch long across the floor, past the wool baskets, the stacked firewood, the line of boots still crusted with snow. The yurt becomes quieter, as if exhaling after all the laughter, the mess, the barely avoided disasters. You ladle out 2 bowls of your culinary experiment. Your cousin sips his cautiously, then makes a face like he bit into a secret. "It's not bad," he says. You take a sip. It's rich, slightly smoky, with a back-of-the-tongue tang from the dried meat. You imagine a future where this dish becomes your signature and is named after you. Then you realize it kind of tastes like buttered smoke and broth you meant to make. You eat anyway. Outside, snow begins to fall again. Soft, powdery flakes. You can hear them landing almost, a faint hiss like sugar being sprinkled over parchment. You reach for the ladle to stir the pot one more time, but stop. There's no need. This batch is done. It's imperfect, but warm. And sometimes that's the best you can ask for in a winter yurt on the steppe, where the fire never listens. The milk never stays put, and the wind keeps trying to rewrite your day from scratch. But you're here, you're warm, and you didn't burn everything, which, in yurt terms, is practically a Michelin star. You're halfway through your second bowl of smoked surprise stew when your younger cousin bursts into the yurt, eyes wide, boots dripping slush, face flushed with cold, and something suspiciously like mischief. "Hoof prints," he gasps. "Too close to the herd." You blink at him. Too close how? He throws his mittens onto the floor in a dramatic swirl and announces, "Too many. And they weren't there this morning." Your aunt looks up from folding wool strips and narrows her eyes. "Did you count them?" "Yes," he says, slightly less confidently. "How many?" He hesitates. "A lot." You sigh. There's no escaping it. You set your bowl aside, wrap a scarf around your neck, and step back into the bitter white. The wind has died down slightly, replaced by that eerie stillness that always feels like the pause before something big, like a snowstorm or your cousin's next bad idea. The herd is gathered near the far side of the enclosure. Most of the goats are huddled together in a woolly clump, chewing slowly and giving you that same silent look goats have given humans since time began. "We were here first." Your cousin points toward a patch of snow near the feeding trough, and he's right. There are hoofprints, several. Some are clearly from your own goats, but others are fresher, sharper, larger. One even seems to press deeper than the rest, like the animal was heavier. You kneel beside it, trace it with a gloved finger and frown. It's not a wolf, that much is certain. Wolves don't leave neat hoof-shaped marks, and these aren't horse prints either. Too small, too sharp at the edges. A wild deer, maybe? Your cousin squats beside you, bouncing slightly in the cold. "Or something else," he whispers dramatically. You raise an eyebrow. "Like what?" He shrugs. "I don't know, maybe a spirit deer, or a snow demon." You look at him. So your theory is that a supernatural being came to browse our goat trough, left perfect hoofprints, and then wandered off without so much as stealing a turnip? He nods. You stand up. Go check the storage tent. If anything's missing, we'll blame the snow demon. Historians still debate the extent to which Mongolian herders believed in supernatural threats to their animals. Some oral traditions reference spirit creatures, long-legged, silent, cloaked in frost, that wandered the plains in winter, confused by the smell of livestock and drawn to body heat. Most modern scholars think these stories were metaphors. Still, when a goat goes missing and you find no trace but hooves pointing in, then back out. Metaphors don't help much. You circle the pen following the tracks. They stop near a drift. Nothing leads away, just a dent in the snow where something may have lain down or vanished. You stand there for a moment longer than necessary, just long enough to feel the hairs rise on the back of your neck. Then, shaking it off, you return to the yurt. Inside, the warmth hits like a wall. Colonel is perched atop the firewood pile now, lazily pawing at a thread of smoke curling from the coals. Your aunt glances up. Find anything? Maybe a deer, you say, or a clumsy goat. She doesn't press, probably because she's seen weirder. You sit back near the fire, unwrap your scarf, and let your cheeks burn pink as they thaw. You're handed another hot drink, this time a simple broth made from boiled herbs and a little leftover fat. You sip it slowly, watching the fire crackle back to life, and realize how quiet it is again. Everyone's listening, even if they pretend not to. The goats haven't made a sound since you came back in. You hear your cousin's footsteps return from the storage tent, crunching snow as he approaches. He ducks in, breathless. Nothing's missing. He says this like it's suspicious. You nod, then glance at the charm hanging by the door. The one the shaman's apprentice gave you. It's still there, still swaying slightly in the draught. Your aunt picks up her spindle and begins spinning wool again, foot tapping in rhythm. Spirits don't like broth, she mutters. You're not sure if that's a proverb or a personal theory? Your cousin slinks into a corner, wraps himself in a blanket, and tries to pretend he's not watching the door. You lean back on your cushion, pulling your knees up. The steam from your cup fogs your lashes. The fire settles into a low, steady burn, and you focus on its dance to keep your thoughts from drifting too far into shadows and hoofprints. Outside, the snow has begun to fall again, soft, slow, deliberate, like someone sprinkling flour over the world one pinch at a time. You finish your drink. Tomorrow, you'll check the prints again. Maybe they'll be gone. Maybe they'll have multiplied. Maybe they never existed at all. But for now, the yurt is whole. The fire is fed, and everyone is inside. That's enough. The snow continues its quiet descent outside, settling over the yurt like powdered sugar on a sleeping cake. Inside, the air is warm, almost sleepy, thick with the scent of wool, wood smoke, and faintly medicinal herbs that someone has hung too close to the fire again. Your cousin, now fully cocooned in a blanket, utters something about taking a brief meditation, which is his code for pretending not to sleep until he's actually asleep. Colonel has burrowed somewhere near the fire pit, snoring so softly it's like a purr made of wool. You stretch your legs, feel the stiffness in your knees from earlier fence repairs, and decide to be productive again. Sort of. You reach for the cracked leather pouch that holds the flint blades, small tools, and bits of string you've saved from ruined clothes. Time to fix that saddle strap you promised you'd mend yesterday. The strap is stiff with cold and old sweat, cracked at the edges, and still smells faintly of the horse who wore it. Tool, the long-nosed, opinionated mare who once kicked a thief in the chest and was briefly worshipped by 2 neighbouring boys for it. You begin to work the leather, softening it with warm breath, a touch of oil, and a lot of persuasion. The thread you're using is sinew, harvested from last autumn's goat leg and dried until tough enough to survive a minor war. It's slow work. The awl slides through the holes, and you pull the sinew tight, knotting it cleanly after each pass. Your aunt watches for a while, says nothing. then nods once, approval in its purest, stingiest form. "Don't overpull," she says eventually. "The knot'll snap in frost." You loosen your grip slightly. This is what afternoons are for: quiet, repetitive work, while the wind sighs at the felt walls like it's being left out of the fun. Outside, snowflakes cluster on the yurt's dome, muted footsteps of a sky that never stops moving. Historians still argue whether saddle repair was a communal task or a solitary one. Some claim Mongolian families often passed gear around for group mending, especially during long winters. Others insist saddles were personal, treated almost like heirlooms, maintained alone, in silence, with hands that knew every scratch. You believe both, because this strap carries the memory of every journey you've taken with Tool, every race, every fall, every soft breath of a cold morning when she refused to move, until you fed her first. A thread snaps mid-pull. You sigh, set down the awl, and rummage for a replacement. As you do, your cousin stirs. "Did you hear what happened at the southern pass?" You glance up. No. He sits up fully now, blanket tangled around one leg. A trader's wagon broke through the ice, just gone, cracked open like an egg. "Anyone hurt?" "Just pride, and 3 barrels of fermented turnip paste." You wince. That's a loss. Another cousin, previously quiet in the corner, adds, "They say the pass is haunted again. Tracks disappear. Birds fly away from it." You snort. "Birds fly away from lots of things." "Not soup," he replies solemnly. This leads to a brief argument about whether ghosts can eat soup, which devolves into a philosophical debate on the digestive systems of the undead, ending only when your aunt throws a dried goat hoof at the wall and says, "Soup's hot, that's all anyone needs to know." Everyone falls silent. You return to your strap. The saddle repair continues, stitch by stitch, pull by pull. The leather bends back into shape, slowly returning to its purpose. You run your fingers along the edge, checking for weak spots, reinforcing where necessary. When you're done, the strap feels stronger. Not new, but trustworthy again. Outside, the sun begins its slow winter descent. The light grows blue and soft, stretching long shadows across the snow. The yurt interior dims, but no one moves to relight the lamp just yet. Instead, you sit in that gentle hush that comes when the chores pause but haven't ended, and the day leans toward evening without asking permission. Your aunt pulls out her spindle and spins wool with the same rhythm she's kept since before you had teeth. Your cousin plucks at a 2-stringed fiddle made from bone and horsehair, playing a wandering tune that doesn't care about melody, but somehow feels right. You sit beside the finished saddle strap, fingers still stained with oil, and feel the weight of the day settle into your shoulders. And then, just as the fiddle finds a strange, sweet note, someone outside laughs. Not loud, not nearby, but close enough, you all freeze. The dog lifts its head. Colonel peers from under a blanket. You rise slowly and cross to the door. Open it a crack. No one there, just the snow and the wind, and a long, empty horizon bathed in blue light. You shut the flap gently and return to your seat. "Probably the wind," someone says. You nod, probably. You wrap the saddle strap in felt and tuck it away in the chest. Done. The fiddle plays on, the fire crackles softly, and the snow continues to fall, quiet, steady, and just strange enough to make you wonder who or what was laughing in the wind. Evening settles like a wool blanket over the steppe, thick and heavy and not entirely clean. The yurt dims with it, light from the smoke hole fading until only the fire remains, glowing softly like a hidden jewel. Shadows stretch long across the felt floor, and the sounds inside grow quieter, softer, more private. You've just finished setting the saddle strap into the gear chest, feeling that particular kind of satisfaction only earned by completing something that had every reason to go badly. Your cousin has finally stopped plucking at the bone fiddle, mostly because one of the strings snapped mid-note and whipped him in the lip. He's now sulking in a corner, nursing his pride with an extra-large flatbread. Colonel is curled into a perfect spiral near the hearth, half buried in a discarded sleeve. He's managed to disappear everything but the tip of his tail, which twitches occasionally like it's still running errands. You sit cross-legged by the fire, letting the heat seep into your knees. Your aunt has pulled out the evening stitching again, this time repairing a cracked water skin with a bit of horn glue and a few choice muttered insults at the material. Your uncle sharpens a knife in slow, deliberate passes, more for the comfort of the rhythm than any pressing need. Then you hear something unusual, the approach of hooves, deliberate and steady, compact snow crunching under weight. A familiar rhythm. Visitors? You and your cousin exchange a glance. Sure enough, the yurt flap lifts, and 3 travellers enter, dusty, snow-coated, and wrapped in layers that have seen wind from 3 provinces. They smell faintly of dried fish, cedar, and long miles on the open steppe. Traders. They carry baskets slung over their backs and dragging sled packs behind them, caked in frost. Their cheeks are red, their eyes sharp. The leader, a woman with 3 silver rings in one ear and a scar under her left eye, nods once, short and respectful. Shelter? Your aunt gestures them in. Of course. They strip off their outermost layers with practiced economy and ease down near the fire. One produces a bundle from beneath her cloak, wrapped in waxed cloth, tied with string. She sets it beside the hearth and unties the knot, revealing goods the likes of which haven't graced your yurt since autumn. Spices, real ones. Whole cloves, dried orange peel, 2 whole cinnamon sticks, so fragrant your cousin's eyes water. She places them on a cloth square like a magician unveiling treasure. You try not to look too excited. In exchange, your aunt offers smoked cheese, dried yak jerky, and a tightly wrapped wheel of fermented mare's milk wrapped in stitched hide. The negotiations begin, not haggling, not really, but a kind of gentle dance, mutual nods, small gestures, weight compared, texture felt. You watch as hands glide across fabric and wood and fur and copper, trading without speaking more than 20 words. Historians still argue whether Mongolian trade relied more on barter or currency in the depths of winter. While coins existed, winter was a time of quiet reciprocity, bartering based not just on material value, but memory, reputation, even the smell of the items being traded. If it travelled far, it meant more. If it lasted long, it earned trust. Eventually a deal is struck. A deal is. In return for the spices, a sheepskin vest and a carved comb made from antler are added to the trader's packs. Your aunt brews tea with the new cloves. The scent transforms the yurt. Suddenly it smells like storybooks, and memory like festivals and clean hair and rare, precious sweetness. You sip it slowly, savouring every hint of the spice as if it might vanish between breaths. The travellers begin to talk now. They tell stories from the southern trails, how the rivers there have frozen in strange spiderweb shapes this year, how a lone herder near the desert edge swears he saw lights dancing in the sky that weren't stars, how 2 brothers nearly fought over a barrel of salted mushrooms, only to discover it was half filled with rocks. They both cried. Someone chuckles. The dog lifts its head and sighs dramatically. Then comes the tale you didn't expect. There's a man out west, the ringed woman says, building a house with no roof, just walls. Says the sky itself is his roof, and he refuses to cover it. Your cousin snorts. That's how you get snow on your soup. He says, the woman continues, that the sky will punish anyone who tries to trap it, that it must be allowed to watch, to listen, that every yurt and tent is a blindfold. You glance up through the smoke hole. The stars are visible again, sharp pinpoints scattered across the void, clear and infinite. You wonder for just a moment if the man has a point, or just very cold toes. The traders stay until the fire burns low. Before they leave, one reaches into a pouch and pulls out something small, a carved horse the size of your thumb, with a red woolen mane tied on with string. She hands it to you. For your dreams, she says. You turn it over in your hand. It's light, smooth, well worn. Clearly passed from person to person. Not made to last forever, but long enough. You thank her quietly. They pack up, layers pulled back on, hoods tightened, sleds reattached. As they disappear into the snow, you tuck the little horse into the folds of your bedding. The fire crackles softly. The clove scent still lingers in the air. And you sit for a moment longer, staring into the red glowing coals, hearing only your own breath, the sigh of the felt walls, and the faint echo of hoofbeats fading into the dark. Somewhere out there, someone is sleeping under the open sky. You prefer your roof, even if the stars sometimes wish it wasn't there. The clove-scented air slowly fades, replaced once again by the familiar mix of wool, smoke, and simmered root vegetables. The little carved horse sits beside your bedding now, tucked into the folds of your robe where your fingers occasionally find it by accident. It's smooth, warm from your skin, and oddly reassuring, as if holding it somehow makes the fire burn brighter, the wind outside a little quieter. It's nearly full dark now, not that the yurt gets much darker than before, just a soft muting of colours, as though someone gently turned the world's contrast dial down and said, "There, that's enough light for today." Your cousin has resumed his usual post next to the hearth, idly braiding scrap threads into what he claims is a fishing line for when spring finally returns. Never mind that he once fell asleep in a fishing hole. Hope is important. You, meanwhile, are stirring another pot, not from hunger, but from ritual. The evening fire needs feeding, the pot needs bubbling.
Even if no one plans to eat.
He plans to eat it, something should be cooking. A yurt without a scent is like a story without a voice. Tonight, you're fermenting mare's milk again, not the glamorous part of nomadic life, to be sure, but a necessary one. You scoop a ladle of the sour, thick liquid into a wooden churn, rounded on the bottom so it rocks when you stir. The smell is distinct, sharp, like overripe fruit mixed with wet wool and defiance. Your cousin groans theatrically and pulls his blanket over his head. It's too early in the evening to die. You stir harder. The churning process is a slow one, circular motion, wooden stick lifting and plunging, a rhythm you've followed since you were too small to even see over the rim of the churn. Your aunt once said that airag isn't made with ingredients. It's made with patience, muscle, and mild resentment. Colonel climbs halfway onto your foot, sniffs the air, and promptly leaves again. Apparently, even he draws the line at fermented dairy. As you stir, your uncle speaks from the shadows, his voice low and scratchy with age. Did I ever tell you about the time your grandmother spilled an entire batch of airag into her boots? You shake your head, smiling. No. He leans back with a nostalgic groan. She thought she could carry the churn and the saddle in one trip. She was wrong. For 2 weeks her feet smelled like a warrior goat's armpit. Everyone laughs except your cousin, who's now breathing dramatically under the blanket and whispering, "I can taste it through my memories." You keep stirring. The sound is soothing, a slosh and swish that matches your heartbeat, that whispers to the fire, that reminds the yurt it's still alive. You think about the traders, about the man with no roof, about whether the stars really are watching. Then your hand slips just a little and the stick knocks against the edge of the churn. A splash of airag leaps upward in protest and lands directly on your tunic sleeve. Your cousin howls from beneath the blanket. You've been marked. That's a curse. You wipe it off with a rag, muttering. It's a blessing, a sticky, fragrant blessing. Historians still argue whether airag was a symbol of abundance or merely survival. It was celebrated in summer, yes, but in winter? It became something else entirely, a reminder that the world could still produce, still transform, still ferment and fizz in the silence of cold. Some believed it had healing properties, others drank it to forget the frost. After 20 minutes of steady stirring, you set the churn aside to settle. The air inside the yurt now holds that unmistakable tang, sharper than cheese, older than milk, bolder than most perfumes. Your aunt lifts her nose, sniffs once, and nods. That'll do. You clean your hands in the wash bowl, flinching slightly at the cold water. Then you sit back down, robe pulled tight, and glance at the fire. The coals have gone glassy at the edges, glowing like the inside of a stone. There's quiet now, not silence. The fire pops occasionally. The wind brushes against the yurt's western wall. But there's a hush beneath those sounds, a calm, a recognition that the day's work is done, the night has settled in, and the rest is yours if you want it. You pull the little horse figurine from your pocket again, trace its mane with your thumb. Think it'll bring good dreams? You ask, mostly to the room. Only if you sleep on your side, your aunt replies without missing a beat. Otherwise the dreams fall out your ears. You smirk and lie back. The felt beneath you is warm from earlier firework. The robe cushions your shoulders. And the ceiling, woven slats darkened with smoke, marked with soot, feels as familiar as the back of your own hand. The wind shifts again, curling around the yurt, like a cat looking for a soft spot. Then, from somewhere outside, a crack. Not thunder, not a branch, something else. Everyone in the yurt stops moving. The dog lifts its head. Colonel peeks from under the felt. Your cousin's eyes appear over the edge of his blanket, wide and unblinking. Another crack, farther this time. No one says a word. Your uncle leans forward and whispers, "That's ice, shifting." Your aunt. "From where?" He shrugs. You sit up slightly, heart slow but alert. Another moment of silence. Then your cousin. "It's probably that ruthless guy again." That breaks the tension. Your aunt chuckles, your uncle huffs, Colonel sneezes, and just like that the crack fades into memory. You lie back again. This time you pull the blanket up to your chin, curl your knees and close your eyes. The ear rag is done, the fire is steady, the roof is holding. Whatever cracked the ice can stay out there. In here you've got warmth, you've got fermented milk, you've got stories. And for now, that's enough. The air inside the yurt has thickened into the kind of warmth that makes your eyelids heavy and your limbs soft. The fire has dipped to its lazy bedtime glow, no longer roaring, just pulsing beneath the coals like a sleeping heartbeat. You're nestled back into your wool-lined corner, eyes half closed, robe tucked under your chin, the little carved horse now resting just above your heart. And then someone calls your name. Softly? From outside. You freeze? You're not dreaming. Not yet. The voice was real. Quiet, but clear. Not a shout, not a knock, just a single word carried on the wind. You open your eyes fully. Sit up, slowly. The others haven't stirred. The dog still lies curled near the coals, chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Your cousin is making sleep noises like someone negotiating with a cheese wheel in his dreams. Another gust brushes the felt wall. It flutters gently. And again, your name. This time, you're certain. It's the voice of someone you don't recognize. You glance toward your aunt. Her eyes are closed, but not deeply. The kind of closed that's aware. She's listening too. You rise without a word and move to the yurt flap. Not hurried, just curious, just enough to prove it's probably nothing. You lift the flap a few inches, just enough to peer through, and there it is. The sunset. Not just any sunset, the kind of one that only happens on the steppe in deep winter. A pink-gold horizon painted across endless snow. Light so soft it looks like it's been combed with silk. The clouds stretched like pulled wool, tinged with lavender, as if the sky is blushing in its sleep. And in that light, everything glows. Your boots crunch softly as you step outside. You inhale slowly. The air is cold, but it doesn't stink. It's the kind of cold that sits on your skin like a gentle warning. Behind you, the yurt feels far away. Even though you only took 6 steps, you scan the area, nothing but snow. Goat prints, the rounded shape of the enclosure, a few shadows too tall to be bushes and too still to be anything alive. Then you realize what you're really hearing. The wind. It's caught in the hollows between the hills, curling around the edges of the world, and every now and then, just for a moment, it catches a note that sounds like your name. Just one syllable pulled into the shape of something familiar, a trick or a test. You exhale slowly and whisper, "Not tonight." You turn your face toward the sunset. It's worth it. The snow glows in gradients, pink near the horizon, blue underfoot, white in between. The light hits every flake, every curve of the land, and scatters like shards of glass suspended in honey. Even the animal tracks look reverent. You remember suddenly something your grandmother said once, long ago. Steppe sunsets aren't just pretty, they're honest. They tell you what the night will be like. You look closely. There's no anger in this sky, no storm curled beneath the colors, just calm. And maybe a little mischief. You stay out longer than you mean to, letting the light wrap around your shoulders, letting the cold keep you alert. You trace a few tracks near the yurt just to be sure, nothing fresh. Nothing unusual, but you do find one small circle of hoofprints, tight, shallow, untouched by drift, the ones you saw this morning, or new. You crouch, touch the edge of the print. Still sharp. You stand and look around again. Empty. You return to the yurt. Inside, everything feels warmer than before. Your aunt is still by the fire, eyes open now, watching the kettle, but not really seeing it. "You heard it too," you say. She nods once. The wind calls a lot of names, doesn't mean it knows yours. You sit down beside her. It sounded real. It always does. She hands you a bowl of broth, light, oniony, warming. You sip in silence. Your cousin stirs, half waking. "Did someone say my name?" "No," you reply gently. "Just the wind teasing again." He groans and rolls over. Colonel has moved. Now he's curled near your feet, nose tucked beneath his tail. You feel his warmth through the felt floor and realize how cold your boots got from standing in the snow. You pull them off, wiggle your toes, and wrap them in spare wool. Your uncle mutters something about sunsets too loud and ghosts with good timing. No one asks him to elaborate. You finish your broth and set the bowl aside. Outside, the last of the sun slips behind the horizon. The sky darkens, folds itself into ink, and lets the first stars peek through. 1, 2, then hundreds. You lie back slowly, breath settling, body relaxing, and above you, through the smoke hole, the stars blink again, honest, still, and just a little mischievous. Darkness now hugs the yurt like a second skin, soft and complete. No lanterns burn, no more snowfalls, and even the wind seems to have drifted off for the night, satisfied that it's properly haunted every corner of the steppe for the day. The fire still glows in its shallow pit, just embers now, red as slow thunder, breathing rhythmically into the quiet. You're not asleep yet.
Not quite. Round you, your family has me.
Millie has melted into the floor, bundled forms breathing in time with the yurt's creaks and sighs. Colonel is a warm loaf near your hip. The dog's tail thumps once in his sleep, chasing something kinder than shadows. Your uncle's snores have reached their usual volume, somewhere between a distant avalanche and a broken drum. You shift slightly, roll onto your side, and pull your robe tighter around your neck. The carved horse presses against your collarbone, small and comforting, a token of something, of travel maybe, of stories shared. That's when the oil lamp falls over. It doesn't crash, just tips. A quiet clink, followed by a soft glug of oil dribbling onto the felt mat. At first, you don't even register it. Just another sound in a world of sleepy sounds. Then comes the smell. Sharp, acrid, hot before flame. You sit up instantly. Your aunt's already moving. So is your cousin. The yurt has shifted in less than a heartbeat, from calm to alert. You see the dark pool of oil creeping toward the embers, a single spark away from disaster. No one yells. That's the trick. Panic is a luxury in a space made of wool and fire. Your aunt grabs the edge of the mat and flips it, smothering the spill beneath a damp corner. Your cousin lobs a scoop of snow, dragged in earlier in a bucket for washing, right at the base of the hearth. It hisses and steams, but no fire catches. A beat of silence. Then your uncle grumbles from under his blanket. "If you're going to burn the yurt, at least do it after breakfast." Everyone exhales. Your cousin sits back, hands shaking. You pat the mat down once more with your foot. Still damp, still smelling like scorched oil and tension. Your aunt scoops the overturned lamp and mutters, "That one's cursed. It always tilts." You make a note to use a rock as a base next time. Colonel, disturbed from his nap, crawls up your sleeve and buries himself against your ribs. You can feel his tiny heartbeat racing. You stroke his fur absent-mindedly and lie back down, heart still pounding in your ears. "That was fast," your cousin says. You nod. "Could have been worse." He nods too, then flops backward with the grace of a sack of radishes. "Let's not do that again." Everyone begins to settle once more, a little slower this time. Like the yurt itself is catching its breath. The embers remain unbothered, still glowing with quiet dignity. They hadn't even sparked. But it was close, too close. You lie awake a little longer, eyes fixed on the ceiling beams. Your aunt is right. Those lamps do tilt. You've always meant to fix it, but like most things in winter, meant to isn't the same as done. Historians still argue whether Mongolian yurts had regular fire drills or practiced responses to mid-yurt disasters. Most evidence suggests that families simply knew what to do. When the walls are made of dry wool and the roof is one gust away from flapping off, everyone develops a sixth sense for what to grab, where to throw it, and how not to scream. You roll onto your other side, careful not to jostle Colonel, who has resumed snoring, if the tiny whistles from your elbow count as such. A soft whisper comes from across the yurt. "Do you think fire spirits try to test people?" You recognize the voice, your younger cousin, wide awake now. You don't answer immediately. Then, "I think fire doesn't care about people, but people care about each other." A pause. "Okay," he says. You hear him shift, blankets rustling. Then, "I still think it's the cursed lamp." You smile. "Then tomorrow, we banish it." He nods in the dark. You can hear it. And gradually, the quiet returns. The oil has been cleaned, the mat will dry. The hearth has been tamed again, and everyone still breathes in time with the fire. Eventually your eyelids get heavy again. The last thing you hear before slipping back into that warm nowhere between dreams and memory is your aunt softly singing. Not a song for anyone. Not a lullaby. Just a tune she knows, older than she is, possibly older than the yurt. It's the sound of soot being forgiven, of light being trusted again, of a home that almost burned but didn't. By the time you next wake, it's not from fire or noise or dreams. It's from stories, voices, not loud, not urgent, just rising and falling like the wind, talking to itself, weaving tales across the smoky air of the early night. You open your eyes to find that the yurt has slipped gently into one of its oldest rituals, the snowstorm storytelling. Even when there's no storm, the stories still come. Your aunt is sitting upright, blanket wrapped around her shoulders like a ceremonial cape. Her voice is steady, a low rhythm that drips like tea into the minds of everyone gathered around. The children are awake again, all eyes and ears. Your cousin is perched, cross-legged, with a bowl of dried berries in his lap, popping them one by one like punctuation. Even the dog is paying attention, one ear twitching toward the fire. Colonel is fully awake, sitting in the curve of your knee like an opinionated meatloaf, eyes locked on the storyteller. You sit up slowly, adjust your robe, and ease into the circle. Your aunt continues, voice soft but sure. The hunter rode into the valley and found no tracks, no goat, no hare, no wolf, just snow, undisturbed. Except for one set of footprints, his own. A child gasps. You reach for a warm bowl someone has passed your way, roasted roots with clove, a miracle in this weather, and take a small bite. She continues, so he turned back, but with every step the prints behind him vanished. He walked, they disappeared, he ran, they followed, but only when he looked away. You don't interrupt, no one does. These aren't just stories, they're the insulation between your yurt and the dark. When the snow presses close, when the wind sounds like a whisper too close to your ear, when you wake unsure if the shape outside is a tree or something thinking, stories are the fire you can feed without kindling. Your uncle jumps in now, his voice rough like worn boots. And that's why if you ever feel watched in the hills, never stop walking and never turn around too fast. The thing behind you prefers to be unseen. A ripple of delighted horror moves around the yurt. Even the older cousins, who roll their eyes, shift slightly closer to the hearth. Your cousin clears his throat and joins the game. "There's a legend," he says, adopting a voice half a shade deeper than his own, "of a woman who married a man with no shadow." You raise an eyebrow. That's new. She met him in spring. He always stood in the sun, always smiling,
always kind. But one day they travelled through the forest, and she looked down and saw only her own shadow, not his. She said nothing. That night she woke up and realised he was standing over her, not asleep, not blinking, just watching, and still no shadow. "Did she run?" a child asks. Your cousin smiles darkly. "No, she offered him a bowl of tea with crushed charcoal in it, because shadows drink charcoal. If he was real, it wouldn't hurt him. If he wasn't—" He pauses. "What happened?" asks the smallest voice in the room. "He vanished into smoke," your cousin whispers, "and she never walked in sunlight again." Your aunt nods slowly, as if giving him storyteller credit. You almost applaud. Almost. Historians still argue about how much weight oral tradition held in Mongolian family life. But here, in this circle of fire and breath and listening hearts, there's no debate. The stories aren't for entertainment, they're glue, a shared way of mapping the invisible world.
A compass made of wolves, hooves, shadows, and cold tea. You toss a piece of bark into the fire. It hisses softly, like it too has heard this tale before. Then it's your turn. You lean forward. "Once," you say, "there was a goat who refused to die." This gets a few raised eyebrows. He lived on the far edge of the herders' camp, small, scruffy, absolutely terrible attitude. Everyone thought he'd been eaten by wolves at least 3 times, but each spring he returned, covered in mud, smelling like old onions, and somehow bigger than before. Someone laughs. You press on. One day a storm came, a big one, the kind that eats tents, and afterward, when the snow cleared, the goat was gone. The room leans in, but in his place, a brand new saddle, perfectly shaped, leather still warm, no tracks, no note, just a saddle. "So what happened?" someone asks. You smile. Now every time someone loses a goat in that valley, they find gear instead, a knife, a harness.
"One time, an entire sled, all very useful, all slightly smelly, all slightly chewed." There's laughter now. Even your aunt chuckles. Some say the goat turned into a spirit of salvage. Others say he's still out there, watching, judging, waiting to swap your lunch for a used boot. A cousin tosses you a dried berry in tribute. The fire crackles. The stories go on. From one mouth to another, the tales move like warmth, like breath, wrapping the yurt in something thicker than felt. Eventually, your uncle dozes off mid-story about a giant marmot who hoarded soup bowls. The kids fade first. Then your cousin, slumped like a sack of flour against the wall. You stretch your legs out slowly, the carved horse still tucked near your heart. Colonel is asleep again. You lie down once more, and as the last storyteller hums the last line of an old song, something about moons, snowdrifts, and someone marrying a snow cloud, you close your eyes and dream of goat spirits and flickering shadows and sunlit valleys filled with tools no one remembers making. The fire's pulse has softened to a whisper. A low orange glow seeps through the cracks in the charred wood, painting gentle stripes on the felt floor.
Around you, the yurt breathes slow and deep, its inhabitants tucked into their dreams like parcels of wool, each with their own rhythm.
Only the dog's ears still twitch occasionally, scanning the quiet. And then, thump! A sudden sound near the hearth. Not loud, not dangerous, but real enough to jolt you halfway to sitting. Your eyes fly open. You scan the yurt quickly. Everything's fine. The pot lid has fallen, that's all. Probably shifted from the heat. It now rests at a crooked angle against the kettle. You sigh, roll back down and pull the robe tighter. But now you're awake again. Too awake. Sleep is a skittish thing in a yurt. One misplaced thought, one odd sound, and it's gone, like steam rising through the smoke hole. You close your eyes, willing your heartbeat to slow, your thoughts to smooth, but your brain is now fully committed to reviewing every embarrassing thing you've ever said to a trader, and to recalling the weird dream you had last week where Colonel was elected village chief and banned all footwear. So you give in. You sit up and quietly light the lamp again, shielding the flame with your hand so it doesn't flare too fast. The glow spills out gently, casting long shadows and illuminating the wooden boxes near the back of the yurt. You decide to polish the family's bronze mirror. It's not a mirror in the way modern people would think. Not glass, not clear. It's a shallow, hand-sized bronze disc so old that it has gone from shiny to dull and back again over the years, depending on who bothered to polish it. Your aunt says it belonged to her aunt, who only looked in it twice a year and once accused it of being rude. You unwrap it from the wool pouch where it's kept, place it on your knee, and dip a cloth into a mix of ashes and fat. Not fancy, but it works. You rub gently in circles, watching the surface change beneath your touch.
The image that slowly returns is vague, rippled, imperfect. Not a reflection so much as a hint, a suggestion, like the bronze is remembering what you look like from last time. Your nose appears first, then your eyes, your hair is a blur of shadow. You smirk slightly, and the mirror returns a sleepy, distorted version of it. You pause, then whisper, "Still better than my cousin's face." Somewhere under a blanket, your cousin mutters, "Heard that." You keep polishing. The mirror, when fully cleaned, reveals a small engraving near the edge, almost worn smooth. A simple symbol, a spiral surrounded by 3 dots. No one in your family remembers what it means. Some say it's decorative, others say it's a sign of protection. Your aunt once insisted it was a maker's mark from a city far to the west, a place where people live in stone towers and drink their tea with saucers. You've never seen a saucer in your life. You set the mirror upright beside the lamp and watch it reflect the glow. It catches the flicker of the flame and throws it gently back onto the yurt wall, a trembling disk of gold. Then, because you're already up, you crawl toward the entrance flap and ease it open just enough to let in a breath of outside air. The world is made of silence and silver. The snow glows under the starlight, almost blue in its stillness. The sky above is endless and sharp, full of cold stars that look too close and too old. You let the cold kiss your face for just a second longer than necessary. Then you close the flap again. You've seen what you needed to see. You crawl back to your bedding, feeling the weight of sleep finally nudging again. You ease down, pull the blanket back over your shoulders and nestle into the folds like someone disappearing into a memory. Historians still wonder what objects Mongolian nomads considered precious. Swords, of course, saddles, but also mirrors, brushes, small charms, things not for war or trade, but for self, for remembering who you were when the wind and the fire and the chores had all stripped everything else away. You reach for the little carved horse. It's still there, still warm, still watching over your dreams, and the mirror, still reflecting nothing but a little golden flame and the promise of morning. Your breath slows. Around you the yurt settles again. A slight creak in the roof beam, the dog sighs, Colonel snores into your ribs. Sleep returns, not because the world has gone quiet, but because you finally have. And in your last waking thought, you imagine the bronze mirror still glowing softly beside the fire, showing a blurred version of your face. Not perfect, but yours. And enough. The lamp burns low, a final quiet halo of gold before sleep finally claims it. You're deep under your blankets now, nestled beside the fire's fading warmth, with your breath rising and falling in the dark. The mirror lies near the hearth, its polished face catching the last flicker of flame. Everything in the yurt is still, until the dog growls, not loudly, just a deep, low rumble in his chest. A warning, not a call to arms. Your eyes open instantly. Colonel lifts his head too, his little ears forward, body frozen. Even the coals seem to hesitate. The wind outside has dropped to an eerie quiet, and that silence makes the growl feel bigger than it is. You sit up slowly, careful not to wake the others. The yurt around you is exactly as it should be, felt walls undisturbed, sleeping forms unchanged. But the dog is staring at the entrance flap, unblinking. You whisper, "What is it?" He doesn't move, just flicks one ear. You rise and move to the flap. Your fingers, still warm from sleep, reach for the edge of the felt. You lift it a few inches. Cold air rushes in, sharp, crisp, but not unfriendly. The night outside is untouched, no movement, no sound, just moonlight coating the snow in soft silver, making everything shimmer as if the steppe itself is dreaming. Then you notice them. Hoof prints, new. Clear in the moonlight, leading in from the edge of the hill and stopping just 10 paces from the yurt. No return trail, no rider, just presence. You step outside, slowly. The prints are deep, fresh. Cloven, but not goat. Not quite deer either, wider, cleaner. You crouch and touch the edge of one. Still warm beneath the crust, you look up. The wind holds its breath, there's nothing else. But you feel it. That sense that something has passed through. A shadow that never cast one. A whisper that didn't need a voice. Not threatening, not kind, just curious. You whisper into the night, "Thank you for not knocking." The silence responds in kind. You return inside, letting the flap fall gently behind you. The dog curls back into his corner, satisfied. Colonel resumes snoring. You crawl under the blankets again, heart slow but alert, eyes tracing the shadows overhead. Your aunt stirs. "You saw them?" You nod in the dark. She doesn't say anything else, just breathes out slowly and adds another scrap of wood to the coals. You both watch it catch. Small flames rise, crackling faintly, chewing gently on the silence. "I left a slice of turnip on the step," she says. You smile. "That was very generous." She shrugs. They never take anything big, but it's polite to offer. Historians still argue whether such traditions were superstition or subtle diplomacy with the unseen. Many chalk it up to survival psychology, creating meaning from the unexplained. But the truth is quieter than that. When you live out here, wrapped in sky and silence, it's just easier to believe that not everything is yours to understand. You pull your blanket back up to your chin. The mirror still reflects a single flame. The hoof prints will be gone by morning. And whatever left them, it's already miles away, somewhere beyond the ridgeline. Still walking, still watching, still silent. You close your eyes. This time you fall asleep gently. No jolts, no worries, just a slow slide into dreams carried by hoofbeats that never echo, and snowflakes that forget where they landed. You wake to a scent so deep and rich that it drifts into your sleep first, nudging your dreams aside like a friendly elbow. Something earthy, sweet, and faintly smoky. It winds its way into your nose before your eyes even open. And when they finally do, you're greeted by a low, golden light and the sight of your aunt crouched near the fire, humming softly and tending to something bubbling in a wide, flat pot. Stew.
Real stew. You sit up, rubbing the crust of sleep from your eyes, limbs heavy with that satisfying wintry ache of a night slept well. The yurt is warm, the coals stoked back into a soft, flickering life. The others begin to stir too, your cousin stretching like a cat, your uncle grunting and rolling over like a bag of potatoes, reluctantly accepting its fate. Colonel leaps onto your lap without warning, pressing a cold nose into your collarbone. He smells the stew too. You peer into the pot and see thick chunks of root vegetables, thin slices of dried mutton, and something unexpected, mushrooms. Real ones. You raise an eyebrow at your aunt. Where did those come from? She doesn't look up. The traders. Of course, you almost forgot about last night's visit. The scent of clove and the carved horse feel like a half-remembered dream now.
You glance over. Yes, the horse is still there, perched near your pillow like a silent talisman. As the stew bubbles, your uncle begins assembling the morning fire tools, thin sticks, half-burned kindling, and a bit of dried dung, which he always handles with a reverence normally reserved for holy relics. He hums tunelessly while he works, the sound of a man pleased to be awake, but not yet forced to think. Outside, a soft patter begins. You tilt your head, not wind, not snow. Drips. You step to the flap and lift it carefully. The sky is grey now, full, soft and low, and from it falls not snow but sleet, light, icy rain that clicks as it lands. A rare visitor this time of year, it coats everything in a thin skin of wetness, transforming the hard-packed snow into slush and turning the steppe into a whispering field of puddles. You return inside and announce, "The sky's melting." Your cousin groans. "That means we have to move the goats." You nod, "and fix the roof seam, again." Your aunt, unbothered, ladles stew into wooden bowls and passes them around. It's hearty, rich, with a slight tang from something fermented, and a heat that fills your chest with the confidence of someone about to do chores they really, really don't want to do. The stew disappears quickly. Your uncle is the last to finish, savouring each bite as though chewing were a spiritual experience. Then begins the dance. Water is the enemy of felt. A yurt roof that absorbs too much will drip, sag and betray you at the worst possible moment. And so, despite the cold, the family springs into action. You, your cousin, and your uncle clamber up the frame carefully, balancing on the wooden ribs of the yurt to check the tension cords, adjusting the outer layer to create tighter run-off angles. The sleet slips off in lines now, beading along the felt edge like tiny beads of mercury. Historians still argue whether Mongolian yurts were originally designed to withstand wet climates or dry ones. The answer is yes, these dwellings flex with the world. Snow, layer up, wind, weight the sides, rain, angle the roof. They're less buildings and more living structures, breathing, adapting, always slightly shifting, with the people inside. Your cousin slips slightly and lands on his rear, in the snow with a soggy plop. You stifle a laugh. "You okay?" He glares. "Only my dignity." From inside, your aunt's voice calls, "Bring in some dry twigs while you're sulking." You help him up and gather a few sticks from the kindling bundle stored just under the roof eaves. They're dry, barely, but better than nothing. You both duck back into the yurt, brushing sleet from your shoulders. Inside, it smells of stew, damp wool, and a faint note of singed bark. Your aunt eyes your cousin's soaked backside. The yurt is not for puddles. He grumbles and changes into dry leggings, muttering about treacherous roofs and untrustworthy precipitation. You take your spot near the hearth again, the dog already warming it for you. Colonel hops onto your knee and sneezes exactly once, a kind of final judgment on your outdoor performance. The sleet continues. It's not threatening, just persistent. A reminder that the world is always shifting, water to ice, cloud to melt, sky to ground. And you? You adapt. You pull your blanket over your shoulders and lie back again. Rain hisses against the roof. The fire crackles, and somewhere in the folds of your robe, the little horse rests, still warm, still watching. The yurt smells like wet wool and victory. Outside, the sleet has finally tapered into a fine mist, the kind that doesn't fall so much as hover, hanging in the air like a shy ghost. Inside, however, the battle against the weather has been won. The seams are tight, the fire's fed. No leaks have sprung from the roof. At least, none that a carefully placed bowl hasn't caught with quiet dignity. You're back on your cushion, legs stretched toward the fire, steaming gently like a dumpling forgotten on a tray. Your cousin is next to you, sipping his second bowl of stew like it contains the answers to life's deepest questions. Across the room, your aunt is darning a felt sleeve with deliberate tiny stitches. She hums again, not a tune exactly, more like a vibration that keeps the room in rhythm. Colonel is curled up in the hood of your robe, only his nose visible, twitching now and then as if dreaming of a beetle he once almost caught. You should feel sleepy. Instead, you feel present. It's the kind of quiet you don't notice till your ears adjust. No talk, no chores, just the sound of fabric, fire, breath, and the occasional wet drip into the bowl, placed under that one stubborn corner of the roof. Then from your uncle's side of the yurt comes a question. Calm, casual. Do you remember the old man who lived with the wolves? You and your cousin both turn. He's not looking at anyone, just the fire, stirring it with the end of a charred stick, watching the embers shift and pulse. Your cousin blinks. Gee, was that real? He shrugs. Depends what you mean. Your aunt chimes in without looking up. He lived west of the river bend, had a yurt once, then said he didn't need it. Then said he left it standing, walked into the forest with a blanket and a knife, never came back. Until he did, your uncle adds. Your cousin leans forward. And? He was taller, says your uncle, hair to his waist, barefoot in snow, said the wolves had taught him how to breathe without using lungs. You stifle a laugh. Your aunt looks up. Don't laugh. He survived 2 winters that way, ate roots, bark, once stole an entire sheep carcass without leaving tracks. Maybe he was a wolf by then, your uncle adds. Historians still debate the role of solitary mystics in Mongolian society. Were they outcasts, saints, predecessors to shamans? The truth, as usual, is both murkier and simpler. Some people just walked away. And sometimes they came back with stories no one could verify, but everyone wanted to believe. Your cousin asks, what happened to him? Your uncle smiles faintly. No one knows. Last time anyone saw him, he was sitting in the middle of a frozen lake, just sitting.
On the ice, singing to the sky. And then spring came. No tracks, no body, just a circle of melted ice shaped like a yurt. You sit back, feeling the shape of the story settle in your chest like warm tea. You wonder what it would take for you to walk into the woods and never come back. What would you miss? What would follow you? Who would tell your story? Colonel snores. So, probably not him. Later, your cousin decides to play his flute. It's not a fancy instrument, just a short reed pipe he made last summer, hollowed and scorched to seal the fibres. But when he plays it, the sound lifts into the air like a smoke spiral, curling and tumbling in ways that feel older than the yurt itself. The melody is simple, slow.
It drifts lazily between notes, as if trying to remember where it was going before it got distracted by how pretty the view is. The dog sighs and rolls over. The fire flares once, briefly, then settles again. Your aunt hums in harmony with the tune. And outside, the mist still lingers, soft, persistent, watching. You lie back with your hands folded on your stomach, fingers brushing the carved horse, now as familiar as your own ribs. You wonder what dreams the old man had on that lake, if the wolves gave him visions, if he ever wished he'd stayed in the yurt, if the circle in the ice was his way of drawing a door back into the world. You close your eyes, and the music carries you not away, not forward, but deeper, into the moment, into the wool, into the fire, the breath, the hush. And in that stillness you hear something rare, not a voice, not a vision, just this. You are here. And right now that is everything. The flute's song has drifted into memory now, leaving behind only silence and a faint warmth, like the last note still echoes somewhere in your chest. You open your eyes to find the yurt cloaked in amber, afternoon light leaking through the roof ring in soft, slanted rays, thick enough to catch the drifting smoke and wool dust in delicate trails. It's a golden hour, and not just in colour. There's a pause in the day here, a gentle nothingness between lunch and the next chore. This is the moment when even the goats lie down, when even the wind seems to take a breath. It's not rest, not yet, but it's permission to rest, which is sometimes more powerful. You sit up slowly and stretch your back until it makes the soft cracking noise of a well-worn hinge. Colonel blinks at you from inside your robe with the expression of someone who resents movement on principle. Your cousin has fallen asleep halfway through folding a blanket. Your aunt is gently nodding over her mending. The dog twitches in his dreams, chasing perhaps the old man across the frozen lake, or maybe just a rogue beetle. You rise quietly and make your way to the hearth. There's still a bit of stew left, just enough to scrape into a wooden bowl. You sit cross-legged and eat slowly, the way you might read a letter from someone you miss. Outside, the mist has lifted, replaced by a soft breeze, and sky the colour of worn cotton. There are chores waiting, you know that. The goats will need to be moved to dry ground, and the tent ties checked again now that the rain has passed. But not yet. For now, the stillness wraps around you like an extra layer of felt. Then your aunt speaks without looking up. "I think it's time you took the drum out." You pause mid-bite. "Really?" She nods once. Your cousin, awake now and suddenly very interested, lifts his head. "Now it's not a festival." "No," your aunt replies, "but the sky's listening." You set the bowl down and stand. From under one of the storage benches, wrapped in a blue wool cloth, lies the family drum. Not huge, just the size of a large dinner plate, but heavy in a way that feels old. Its body is carved wood, stained deep red from age and resin. The hide stretched across its top is worn smooth in the center from generations of hands. A single white symbol, an open spiral, very much like the one etched on your mirror, is painted on the surface. You unwrap it, slowly, then sit down again, cross-legged, facing the hearth, and you begin to tap. Soft at first, fingers only, like rain trying to remember how to fall. Then slowly stronger, a heartbeat, not your own, older. Thump, thump, pause, thump, thump, pause. You don't think as you play, you don't direct the sound. The rhythm finds you, slides in beside you and takes your hands like an old friend saying, "I'll lead." Your aunt hums again, this time matching the tempo. Your cousin claps softly, once every few beats. The dog lifts his head. The air inside the yurt thickens, not with smoke, but with something more difficult to name. Memory, maybe, or gravity. Historians still argue over the role of drumming in nomadic life. Some say it was used for ritual, others say it was simply music. But those who've sat inside a yurt during golden hour, with the drum in their lap and the whole world holding its breath, know better. The drum is a door. To what? No one agrees. To the past, to the land, to the sky, to the place inside your ribs where language stops. You continue. The sound is steady now, low, rich, echoing slightly off the felt walls, bouncing back as if the yurt itself is singing with you. Outside, a flock of crows wheels in the sky, cawing once, then gone. You play until your hands are warm, until your cousin has fallen asleep again, this time smiling, until Colonel has pressed his head against your chest to listen, until the fire sighs in approval. Then you stop. No applause, no commentary, just silence. A perfect, clean pause, one you could place a bowl on without it tipping. You wrap the drum again, tuck it beneath the bench, and return to your seat. And now the stillness feels earned. You sip the last of the broth. Outside, the wind picks up again, not a threat, just a reminder that the day is still happening. Somewhere beyond the hills, another fire is being lit. Another yurt breathes into the cold. But here, for this moment, everything holds. The golden hour is fading now, the light in the yurt shifting towards soft grey. Shadows grow longer, stretch across the floor in quiet ribbons. You watch one stretch from the hearth to your cousin's foot and gently tickle it like a passing whisper. He stirs slightly, adjusts his position, and goes back to sleep with a sigh that sounds suspiciously like the word no. You're not ready for evening chores yet, not because they're hard, though they are, but because there's a kind of reverence to this exact window of time. The world outside begins winding down, but doesn't sleep. The wind hums, but doesn't howl. And your body is awake, but not demanding. You step outside again. The ground is firming up, drying slowly from the sleet earlier. The air is crisp, tinged with that post-rain scent that smells like rocks, clean wool, and pine smoke from yurts half a mile away. You walk toward the ridge slowly, careful not to disturb anything. Even the goats resting in their enclosure watch you with eyes half closed, clearly in that sacred state between cud and dream. Up on the hill, the steppe opens. It always does. No matter how many times you walk this path, it still catches your breath. The land goes on forever, rolling, dipping, stretching beneath the sky like a painting no one will finish. In the distance, faint trails crisscross toward other camps, each marked by plumes of smoke or fluttering prayer flags. You sit down, just sit, not for purpose or poetry, just to be. The way your grandmother used to say, the sky doesn't hurry, and it still gets everywhere. From your pocket, you take out the carved horse. It's warm from your hand. You press it against your knee. Its wooden snout, pointing toward the horizon like it too, is looking for something. You think about all the days like this, the ordinary ones. No festival, no visitor, just stew and mist and the rhythm of life beating like a low drum under everything. Historians often write about the major events, battles, treaties, migrations, but rarely pause on the quiet stretch between them. Yet here you are, in one of those stretches, and it is
enough. You look to the west. The sun is melting behind the distant mountains now, smearing the clouds in streaks of orange and plum. Birds wheel lazily overhead, riding thermals with the casual grace of creatures that never trip over their own boots. Back at the yurt, your aunt has stepped outside. She sees you but doesn't call. Just nods once. You nod back. This is the signal. Time to begin the evening work. You rise slowly, dust your knees, and head back down. Your cousin is now awake and grumbling about everything from the cold to the goats' attitudes. He claims one of them is plotting, though he can't explain against whom. Your uncle joins with a coil of rope slung over his shoulder and a face that says he's both ready to work and deeply committed to complaining the entire time. Together, you herd the goats toward their new pen, slightly uphill, drier ground, shielded from the coming wind.
The process is full of muttering, bleating, slipping, and at least one minor argument with a particularly stubborn nanny who refuses to be herded by anyone born after her. By the time the last goat is settled, the sun has dipped below the ridge. You all return to the yurt. Inside, your aunt has rekindled the fire and set the kettle on. She's boiling tea with salt and butter now, a thick, savoury brew meant to line the stomach before bed. You sit by the fire, tired in the way that feels deserved. Your cousin is already wrapped in a blanket, sipping his bowl with exaggerated slurping sounds. Your uncle removes his boots with the solemnity of a priest. Colonel is circling your bedding, fluffing an invisible nest in the felt. The warmth spreads through the room again. The last light from outside flickers through the roof ring and fades. You sip your tea. It's rich, oddly comforting, with that creamy saltiness that only makes sense when you're surrounded by wool and cold and family. Your aunt pulls out a bundle of dry herbs, tosses a pinch onto the coals. The smoke rises sweet and faintly spicy, juniper and wild thyme, and wraps around the yurt like a lullaby. No one talks much, no one needs to. This is the hour for knowing glances, small smirks, and the long exhale of a day done well. You lie back. The drum is quiet now, the mirror tucked away, the carved horse rests against your chest again. The sky outside has turned navy, then black, then velvet. And above it all, the stars come out, fierce and bright, puncturing the sky with their age. One by one, eyes begin to close, and the yurt, warm and round and humming, gathers its people close. Outside, the wind picks up again. Not the howling kind from earlier. This one is gentler, like a traveller passing through, tugging at the edges of the felt yurt with mild curiosity. You hear it whistle faintly over the roof ring, brushing past the wooden spokes with the soft whir of breath through an ancient flute. Inside, your eyes are half closed. The tea is finished, the coals glow steady, and kernel is tucked into the fold of your robe like a furry button stitched to your ribs. Your cousin has officially stopped making sounds, a reliable sign that he's fallen asleep. Your aunt lays out her last stitch, threads her needle through the hem of the sleeve one final time, then sets it gently aside. There's no urgency to sleep, no rush, just readiness. You roll onto your side and tug your blanket up to your chin. The little carved horse rests in your palm now, warm with memory. You stare at it for a moment and realize you've started thinking of it as alive. Maybe it is. Maybe everything you carry long enough starts to listen. Your uncle coughs once, then mutters in his sleep something about a hat thief. No one responds. The dog shifts. You exhale, long and low. And for a little while, everything is still again. But then, soft footsteps, not alarming, not hurried. Just faint, padded movement. You open your eyes. The yurt flap is being lifted, just slightly, just enough to let someone slip through. It's a figure wrapped in grey wool, hood drawn. A neighbour, you recognise her, an older woman, from the next camp over. She says nothing, just smiles faintly and raises a hand in quiet greeting. Your aunt stirs and nods, already rising. No questions, no surprise. This happens sometimes in the steppe, when sleep won't come, or dreams press too hard. People walk. They drift from one warm circle to another like moths chasing a quieter flame. A cup of tea, a moment of company. A reminder that night isn't always meant to be weathered alone. Your aunt sets water on the kettle again without a word. You sit up, offer a cushion. The woman lowers herself slowly, hands rough with work, face soft with fatigue. She doesn't speak for a while, just closes her eyes and listens to the fire, the creak of the beams, the hum of a sleeping yurt. Then softly she says, "The fox came back." Your aunt nods. "I thought he might. He took the bread I left, but left something in return." Your cousin stirs. Half asleep, he mumbles, "What was it?" The woman chuckles. "A stone, warm." The room accepts this as perfectly reasonable. Historians still argue whether such exchanges were real, symbolic, or some blend of both, but anyone who's ever spent a winter on the steppe knows the line between reality and story is flexible. If a fox brings a stone, you thank it. If the stone feels warm, you don't ask why. The woman sips her tea, then pulls something from her robe. A pouch. She opens it and pours a few objects into her palm. A wooden comb, a thimble, a button shaped like a sunflower, and a carved bone charm shaped like a cloud. She lays them on the floor between you. "Your grandmother gave me these," she says, "when I was your age." You blink. "She knew you?" The woman smiles. "We shared a storm once. Sheltered under the same overturned sled, she told me I snored." You laugh. That sounds like her. She pushes the charm toward you. She said this was for sleeping through wind. You pick it up gently. It's small, rounded, surprisingly smooth. You press it to your cheek. Warm, somehow. You offer the woman the last piece of dried fruit from your pouch. She accepts it like a ritual, nods once, and leans back. Within minutes, her breathing evens out. She's asleep. Just like that, the yurt has welcomed one more body into its rhythm,
A little more breath, a little wreath, a little more warmth. You and your aunt exchange a glance, not surprise, not even curiosity. Just the look of two people who understand the rules of night visitors. Let them in. Give them tea. Let them leave when their dreams return. You lie back down. The charm is in your hand now, the carved horse tucked beside it. Outside the wind shifts, not stronger, just different. As if it has noticed the extra heartbeat inside. And the yurt, this soft circle of wool and wood and time, gathers you all in tighter. The night deepens, you can feel it, the way you feel a blanket being tugged up around your shoulders. The stars outside are sharper now, clearer, colder. Inside the yurt, the fire has settled into its deepest rhythm, a soft and steady glow like a sleeping breath. The shadows it casts are gentle and long, curving over felt and fur like quiet sentinels. The guest from the next camp sleeps soundly, wrapped in a wool shawl and propped against a rolled cushion.
Her teacup rests beside her, empty but warm. Colonel has migrated to the far side of your blanket, seeking optimal warmth and minimal movement. You lie on your side, eyes open just enough to see the ceiling ribs arching above you in a perfect circle. It's a structure you've seen every day of your life, but right now it looks like the inside of a giant, sleeping animal, breathing, protective, watching over you with patient stillness. Your aunt is still awake. She's turned her attention to a small bundle near her bedroll, one wrapped in deep red cloth, tied with a worn leather thong. From it she removes an object you haven't seen since last winter, the wind bones. They're thin pieces of carved horn etched with patterns, some geometric, others like swirling clouds or curling vines. Each one fits into her palm like a puzzle piece, and each has its own sound when struck. Wind bones aren't music. They're not exactly ritual either. They're messages. Your aunt lifts one to her ear and flicks it gently with a fingernail. It rings, a faint, bright note, so soft it barely reaches you. Then another and another, each tone different. Higher, lower, one faintly metallic, one hollow like breath through a reed. She listens after each one, as if waiting for the yurt to answer. You rise and crawl over slowly, sitting beside her. "Which one is that?" you whisper. She holds it up. "East wind at dawn. It said we'll have fog." You nod. Makes sense. She hands you one of the bones. "Try." You take it carefully, smooth, cool, feather light. You flick it, and the note it sings is deep and round, like the sound of snow settling after a long drift. "South wind on hard snow," she says, smiling. "That's a good one. Means stability." You both sit in silence, tapping and listening. The guest doesn't stir. Your cousin shifts slightly and the dog snorts in his sleep. You wonder how long these wind bones have been in your family. Generations? Centuries? They feel like something older than memory, passed down, not with instructions, but with instinct. You just know which one to choose, just know how to hold it. Historians still debate the purpose of wind bones. Were they instruments, charms, ancient calendars disguised as toys? No one knows for sure. Some dismiss them entirely. But if those scholars ever sat here, in this circle of light and hush and breath, they'd understand. They'd feel the weight of sound that doesn't need to be loud. You tap another bone. This one rings higher, like ice, cracking far off in the forest. Your aunt chuckles. "That's the north wind looking for mischief." You whisper, "Is there ever a bone for no wind?" She pauses, then picks up one carved differently from the rest. Smooth, no etching, polished to a pale gleam. She holds it out. You flick it. It doesn't ring. It barely sounds at all. Just a soft thump, like two thoughts brushing against each other. That, she says, is the stillness. The moment before something begins, or just after something ends. You hold it a little longer, then place it gently on the felt beside you. Your aunt wraps the bones back in their cloth, ties the thong, and tucks the bundle beside her bedroll. Then she leans back, eyes closed, breathing steady. You return to your blanket, nestling into your spot, one hand still tingling from the weightless ring of horn. The guest stirs once in her sleep, murmuring something about bells in the fog. You close your eyes, you dream, lightly but vividly, a landscape of sound, each step marked by tones instead of footprints. Your horse is there, trotting beside you, leaving behind a trail of falling notes instead of hooves. Colonel rides in your satchel, making helpful commentary about soup. In the dream, the wind doesn't blow, it plays, and you walk across it like a melody written by the earth. You drift deeper into sleep. The yurt holds steady, and somewhere in the real night, beyond the fabric walls and the frost-coated grass, the wind picks up again, just slightly, humming a note that matches your dream perfectly. Morning returns softly. No sudden light, no loud rooster, just a slow brightening that seeps through the seams of the yurt like warm breath. The kind of light that doesn't wake you so much as gently tap you on the shoulder, whispering, "Hey, it's time again." You blink awake. The fire has dwindled to a few stubborn coals, but they still pulse gently like little embers remembering a dream. The felt walls glow faintly gold, and the cold has crept in, not harsh, just enough to make you pull the blanket closer to your chin before sitting up. The guest is gone. Sometime in the night or early morning, she slipped out without a sound, the way all good guests do in the steppe, leaving nothing behind but the faint warmth of where they once sat, and a teacup set upside down in polite farewell. Your aunt is already stirring. She's halfway through folding the sleeping blankets, moving with the silent ease of someone who has done this for decades. Your cousin is still wrapped like a caterpillar, and your uncle is snoring with a conviction usually reserved for windstorms. Colonel is awake, though, sitting alert near the flap, his ears twitching in quiet disagreement with some nearby squirrel or offending breeze. You stretch. Your body is pleasantly sore, worked, not worn. The carved horse is still tucked beside you, and you take a moment to press it to your chest like a talisman before tucking it safely away again. The morning moves slowly. There's no rush, no alarms, no bells. The day will begin because it must, and because the yurt, like its people, is already in motion, even when it appears still. Your aunt hands you a bundle of herbs, dried and aromatic. "Hang these near the roof ring," she says. "It'll keep the air kind and the wind curious." You do as asked, stepping up onto the wooden ribs carefully and tying the small bundle near the smoke hole. The scent rises immediately. Sage, juniper, maybe a hint of mint. It blends with the warm wool smell of the yurt and the lingering memory of last night's tea. Outside, the goats are already stirring. Their bleats are not desperate, just insistent. The kind of noise goats make when they remember you exist and suspect you might have something to offer. You step out into the morning. The air is cold, crisp, so clean it almost feels like a flavor. You breathe in and feel your lungs expand like sails. The sun is barely above the horizon, painting the grass in pale orange. A low mist lingers in dips and folds like the steppe is still waking up too. And there, at the edge of the ridge, you see them. Hoofprints again, fresh, clear. You walk over slowly, not hurried, not afraid, just curious. They're spaced far apart, deeper than yesterday's, and they form a perfect arc down into the valley. At their end, nothing, just grass and silence. You crouch and place your palm in one. It's warm. And in that moment, you understand something. Not with your mind, but with the part of you that listens when all the stories stop. You realize this winter, like every winter, carries more than cold and snow. It carries messages, meetings, moments, things left at your door that weren't there the day before. You stand. The wind brushes past your shoulders, soft, approving. You return to the yurt. Your cousin is finally awake, shuffling sleepily toward the hearth and mumbling something about goat politics. Your aunt has begun slicing dried meat for breakfast. Your uncle, predictably, is still horizontal. You take your seat and pour yourself the first hot drink of the day. Thick tea with salt and a little butter. You sip it slowly, letting the warmth spread into your fingers. And then, because it feels right, you reach under your blanket and take out the carved horse. You set it on the floor in front of you, upright, facing the flap. "Watcher of dreams," you murmur. Your cousin snorts. "You're being dramatic again." "Always," you reply. The horse doesn't respond. It never does. But it doesn't need to. It's seen what you've seen, felt what you've felt. And as the wind hums gently at the edges of the yurt, you swear the little wooden figure leans ever so slightly forward. You don't remember falling back asleep, but you do wake again later in the morning to the unmistakable scent of something sweet and toasty floating through the yurt. Pine nut cakes. You blink, and for a moment the world is only warmth and smell and a deep, sleepy hum somewhere in your bones. The kind of hum that says you've been well cared for, that the wind kept its distance last night, that the fire never quite went out, that the world outside may be cold, but in here, in this little round miracle of felt and smoke and stories, you're held. You sit up. The cakes are stacked on a small wooden plate near the hearth, crispy on the edges, golden in the centre, and still steaming faintly. Your aunt is nowhere to be seen, off with your uncle, likely checking the western goat fence, but she's left the plate beside your cushion like a quiet blessing. You eat slowly. Each bite is nutty, slightly sweet, and carries a hint of the firewood used to toast them, cedar maybe. The kind of food that feels older than you, like it was invented before people had words for hunger. Colonel surfaces from under the blankets, eyeing your breakfast with mild betrayal. You break off a piece and offer it to him, and he accepts it with the solemnity of a prince accepting tribute from a loyal subject. The yurt is quiet again. Your cousin has gone out too. Just you now, you and the wooden walls. You and the lingering scent of herbs from last night's smoke. You and the silence that feels like it was folded by hand and tucked into every seam of the place. You glance around and notice things you didn't before. Faint scratches on the beams from last summer's move, a patch in the felt shaped like a cloud, the tiny blue bead sewn into the roof cord for luck, and the mirror. Still near the hearth, you pick it up again and look into it, not expecting clarity or revelations, but just looking. Your face stares back, slightly flushed from sleep, hair askew, eyes bright with something you can't name. You tilt it slightly and catch the reflection of the carved horse behind you. You smile. Historians still debate whether mirrors in steppe cultures were symbolic, practical, or simply pretty. But in that moment, the mirror is something else entirely. A reminder that you are here, that this day, like every day before it, is both fleeting and full. Outside, the goats start their morning chorus, bleating, bumping into one another, issuing complaints about the quality of frost or the indignity of being awake. You set the mirror down and wrap the carved horse in a strip of red cloth. It's yours now, not as a souvenir, but as a witness. You tuck it into your satchel and rise. Time to step outside. The wind is soft today. No sharp teeth, just a hand on your back, nudging gently. You walk toward the ridge again, not because there's something to find, but because it feels right to say goodbye to the view. And it's still there, the wide, rolling steppe, the threads of smoke from other camps, the curve of sky so vast it feels like a bowl tipping toward forever. You stand there, breathing. The wind lifts your collar. In the distance, a line of horses moves slowly across the valley floor. Riders dressed in layered wool, shifting like shadows, moving as one. They don't look up, they don't wave, but they feel like part of the story now, like punctuation, like the next page turning. You close your eyes and whisper, "Thank you," to the wind, to the yurt, to the fire and the stew and the stubborn goat, to your cousin's flute and your aunt's hum and your uncle's absurdly loud snoring, To the fox who left a stone, to the old man on the lake, to the hoofprints that never pointed home, thank you. Then you open your eyes and walk back down. The day is calling, the fire needs stoking, the goats want more drama, your aunt will want help. And the wind? It's already whispering new ideas for tomorrow. You duck into the yurt one last time, and as the flap falls closed behind you, the round walls catch you once again in their quiet, endless arms. And now, as the final coals fade and the yurt settles into hush, you feel the world slow around you. The fire has gone from flame to ember to gentle glow, and even the smoke seems to move more quietly now. Your breath is soft, steady. Each inhale draws in a little more calm. Each exhale lets the day slip a little further away. Colonel is a warm weight at your side. The carved horse is tucked safely beneath your hand. Everything is still. The yurt creaks once, just once, as the wind outside shifts again. Not a threat, just a reminder that the land keeps turning, even while you rest. You feel that turning now, not as motion, but as rhythm, as lullaby. Out on the steppe, the stars are bright. So bright. Sharper than they seem in the cities, more honest. They've watched every generation before you, every fire lit, every story told, and now they watch over you too. You are wrapped in warmth, in story, in stillness. Let yourself sink a little deeper now. No more hoofprints to follow, no more drums to play, no more stew to stir. Just this moment, just this soft, slow drift into rest. You are safe here, held, heard, home. Let the breath stay steady. Let the stars blur. Let the sounds of the yurt, the soft creak, the faint rustle, the quiet snores rock you like a lullaby from the bones of the earth. And if the wind returns in your dreams, let it carry you somewhere kind,